I'm ready. I am supposed to checkmate black. Okay, I know that queen could go here, but then, the knight. The black knight can stop me if I go here. Okay, so I'm gonna go here. Yay! I got it. All right, this is easy. Next one. White to play and win. Okay. Well, I can go here. Oh. Something with the knight. I know it's something with the knight, but I can't take this. Oh, why didn't I do that? Magnus Carlsen, Sergei Karyak in New York, 2016. I was in New York when he played this game. I should know what he did. I should know what he did. Okay, I'm just gonna go for queen here. Needs to be something with the queen. Queen goes here, then king can take the queen. What other pieces do I have? I also, I'm gonna try the queen here. And I did it! Yay! I'm just as good as the world champion Magnus Carlsen. That's the feeling I have anyway. I'm gonna study on Chessable every day.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses to the endgame with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com. Chessable, take control of your journey towards chess mastery.
So this is the broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is your computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. Can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab,
Let's click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam! Whatever tournament or game you're following, you click it and you open it in the program of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast, and it's all interactive. That's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Hello and a big welcome to everyone joining us for the semi-finals of the Speed Chess Championship. We have a big matchup. It's Mura. Now, Peter, the last time these two played was at the Skilling Open, the preliminaries where Magnus and Maxime drew their game. But today, it's a different format, a different animal.
Yeah, absolutely. Hello, Tanya. Hello, everyone. It's the semi-final. It's a big match. I mean, we have seen it in Hikaru versus Wesley. I mean, when two such superstars clash against each other, then a lot of dramas are guaranteed. I'm expecting a very, very close fight. I don't know. Of course, Magnus is favorite, but what I have witnessed so far that, it comes down that these two players are probably equal up till the very, very last seconds, because only Hikaru managed to beat Wesley thanks to his incredible speed with few seconds on the clock. And this is what we have also seen in the match between Magnus Carlsen against Vladislav Artemiev, because that was also a very close match, but whenever the players were down to 4-5 seconds on the clock, that's when Magnus won the match actually.
You know, Peter, for me, it was really exciting in the last semi-final, which was super close. It was such a big fight, Hikaru versus Wesley, and it was extremely insightful how Wesley in his post-game interview mentioned that he knew before the match that if he took it to the 1+1 without a big lead or without any lead at all, Hikaru would be a favorite. So what Wesley needed to do to take that match was to get ahead in the 5+1 and the 3+1 segment. That didn't happen, and Hikaru came out on top in the end. Now, in today's match, I think whenever Magnus plays, it's easy to say that he is the favorite. What do you think needs to be Maxime's strategy in the three different segments?
Well, what I see in this match is that if you put on yourself too much pressure that, yes, my opponent is probably better in the bullet, that doesn't really work out, because it adds to the pressure. And after all, the opponent is also brilliant in the 5+1 and in 3+1 section. So somehow I think you have to take it philosophical. Believe that, okay, if you already play this match, forget about the strategy, try to play your best chess. And maybe that's when you have a chance, because if we look at it, Wesley also started very well. He was +2 in the 5+1 segment. He had all the chances to go ahead, but somehow maybe, he knew it too well that he needs all this lead, and maybe exactly this hindered him of getting one. Of course, this is more of a philosophical approach. As a player, you try to make your strategy and you think that, yeah, I have to do it. But I'm a little bit skeptical with this.
Yes, I think it's going to be very interesting to watch what it is that Maxime brings to the board today. The one thing that we have noticed is that when Maxime did not play out his regular favorite openings, when we did not see him with the Naidov and the Grunfeld, we never saw Maxime find his rhythm. But in the last Skilling Open, he did that, and we just saw what he's capable of. Are we expecting him to change his openings, or do you think that Maxime needs to stick to his favorites, especially given the short time format?
Yeah, I think that this is a very, very interesting point, and let's also not forget that Maxime, together with Jan Nepomniachtchi, are leading the candidates. So actually, these two with 1 point margin. So these two players, before the restart of the candidates, are in a very good spot in order to fight it out between each other. In this regard, Maxime is a very big potential candidate of facing Magnus in the World Championship match final, and that's a huge match. And this is also a huge match because, yes, it's speed chess, it's blitz, even faster blitz and then bullet, but they face each other in many, many games. And I believe that Maxime has to stick to his weapons and, to call Magnus out and see, what, this is my opening, come on, in a match, how are you going to treat it? And maybe force Magnus to sidestep and try, all these kinds of London systems or whatsoever. I'm also very interested to see Magnus's reaction, that given the fact that he knows that maybe Maxime is a very likely candidate, will he deliberately try to challenge him in Naidov? Come on, show me your preparation. You need it for the candidates, but you really want to show it in this speed championship. So I think there are a lot of intrigues. Curious to see Magnus's decision.
I think we're definitely in for a very, very exciting match today. Peter and I were talking about whether it's going to be something like the Hikaru Fedosiv or more like the Hikaru Wesley match, and both of us agree that this is going to be extremely close. Let's take a look at the bracket so far. We've got Hikaru, who's been steamrolling his way into the finals. His match against Wesley was absolutely nail-biting, but he did come on top of that. Magnus has taken down Artemiev, while Maxime took down Aronian on his path to this semi-finals. You know, Peter, there was an interesting observation that I read on chat that this format is more about fastest player. You have to have the skill of the very best in the world. It's so difficult to be fast in chess otherwise.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I also read Wesley's interview after the match, and it was fascinating because both Hikaru and I think Wesley gave very honest view on how they were looking things. And Wesley pointed out the reason why it is so unpleasant and difficult to face Hikaru in a bullet game because he plays extremely good chess and does it extremely fast. And exactly, that's the combination that you really need in bullet. Just being fast doesn't mean anything because you will just be outplayed and crushed. We have also seen how incredibly fast Wesley has been. The only difference what I could see that when they were down to this very, very last seconds, then Hikaru still kept the complete control over the position. And this is what so far I have only witnessed from Magnus, and I have witnessed Hikaru managing to do that. And Wesley, of course, being brilliant, but when he was down to his last 3-4 seconds, then he was vulnerable, and that's what Hikaru used. It's going to be thrilling for me because I know we have witnessed together that in the Skilling Open, Maxime decided to play very fast. So he was very fast, but we have never seen him what he is doing when he's down to his very last seconds.
Now, Maxime and Magnus have, of course, played each other over the board in online chess several times. Magnus does have a big plus score. But really, in this format with 3 different segments, let's get the format up. We're going to have 90 minutes of 5 minutes blitz with 1 second increment. Then we've got an hour of the 3 minutes blitz with 1 second increment. And then 30 minutes of crazy chess with a 1 minute bullet. I think it's really all about the shape and the form that the two players are on the day when it's such a demanding format. Maxime did beat Magnus, in fact, in the London Chess Classic in 2019 in a Blitz playoff. So he's got to remember that moment and bring that game on. Because if against the world champion, you don't have that confidence, you don't bring on that speed, Magnus is not going to give a chance. So definitely, Peter, and you know what I like to do, it's all about the predictions. Let's start with the 5+1 segment. What are your predictions on that one? And I also want to hear from our chat. We will be keeping an eye out on the Chess24 chat. So let us know how you think about this match and how it's going to go. Peter, 5+1.
Yeah, somehow I have the feeling from the experience, the previous match 2 days ago, that the audience knows much better than myself what to expect. Yeah, that was the thing that I learned from it. I have no clue. I have zero, really. I have absolutely no clue what to expect. I don't know what to expect. The big question is how the players are going to settle in the match. That's a really crucial question. I mean, how the first 2-3 games go, and afterwards, you know what struck me so much in the previous match, that how the players are able to continue right away, because this is what I feel for myself I would just not be capable of. You know, that the game finishes and you have maybe some heartbreak and you collapse, and these players somehow don't seem to collapse. They keep on going. That's very impressive. Somehow I feel that maybe Magnus has a more much bigger experience in these matches, but I think it's going to be very close. So if you want to score, I say that it's going to be equal after the first 5+1 section.
I think that would be a dream start for Maxime if he doesn't fall behind in the first segment of the tournament of the match today. Very, very important for him to really do that, because I believe, Peter, just like in the Hikaru Wesley match, in the bullet segment, Magnus will be a bigger favorite than the other 2 segments. I think Maxime's best shot is in the 5+1 and the 3+1. And we do have an interesting insight by Alekine Battery, something that we've been talking about. And he says that Magnus hasn't been in his best form, according to him, which is something that Magnus has said in several interviews during the Skilling Open. despite the fact that he cruised through to the finals, he wasn't really feeling his rhythm. So he still, Alekhine Battery says that he's not been in his best form, but I still see Magnus winning the match. Maxime is a beast though, so who knows? I think anything can happen, but Peter, I know we're not supposed to be biased, and it's not really about being biased. I do think that Magnus is definitely a favorite today.
You think so, yeah? So you clearly pick Magnus as a favorite.
Clearly is a debatable word right now. But yes, I think I do pick, and if we have to give numbers, because that's, I think, the easiest thing. I think in a percentage situation, I would say it is a 60-40. I would take it as a 60-40 to Magnus. What about you, Peter? Are you going to...
Yeah, that's actually a very fair assessment. I mean, I kind of also support this 60-40, maybe 50, but yeah, I mean, 60-40 I can agree with, and probably also Maxime, because he thinks that if you guys give me 40% against the world champion, then why not?
Absolutely, and I see a lot of our chat does think that Magnus is also a favorite. Again, chat, it's a big semi-final, a spot to the final, and somehow I think whoever wins today, it's going to be an incredible final, whether we have Hikaru versus Maxime or sometimes what seems the inevitable Hikaru versus Magnus. I think either ways we're in for a thrilling ride. And once again, thank you for joining us, our viewers on YouTube, on Chess24, on Twitch.
Is growing. I mean, the protagonists know exactly, that everybody is so keen for the start, and they keep us waiting. Yeah, they are very professional.
And BB Cardinal says that it should be a pretty good match. I think Magnus will be loaded for bear this match. MVL is very, very tough. I think Maxime is very tough. He's a very aggressive and an attacking player. His speed chess style has been incredible. I do think he's been suffering a little bit when it's been online chess, but we've seen him more in his elements in the recent times. And I think Magnus, especially what happened at the Skilling Open final, is definitely out here looking to prove a point.
Yeah, and also he had this very tough match against Levon Aronian. The way Maxime reached the semi-final was to knock out Levon, and Levon has been also extremely tough and extremely strong in this format, beating Jan Nepomniachtchi also in a very, very close match. So if we take a look at this, we also see that somehow I have the feeling that this bracket was just so much stronger. I mean, because there are all these blitz specialists and fast players, but I mean, these guys are just super strong and super fast, and that's the combination which is really so hard to face in the matches, and that's why I think we are also seeing all these very, very close matches between the two giants. Because I mean, how do you beat a giant? It's very, very tough.
By being a giant yourself, that's the only way. And I think we're going to have liftoff really soon. We do have liftoff. Peter, just a quick question, because it's a really interesting one before we get to the game. And it's Caribbean Knight who wants to know that had this format existed back in 2000, who do you think would have been the best back then?
I mean, okay, Vichy was incredible, but Kramnik and Vichy, the three of them were very, very strong. And also Michael Adams was doing very well in this format. So I guess those guys would have been the main favorites.
But take a look at this, Peter. Maxime taking a long think. And Queen A4, definitely something he did not expect, because you do not spend so much time otherwise.
Yeah, definitely you do not expect. And I'm very happy that Maxime also did not expect, because I haven't seen this move yet. I mean, there are all kinds of Queen A4 checks in the Grünfeld, in the anti-Grünfeld. But exactly after CD5, knight takes d5, queen a4, and now we see why. Because actually it's combined with the pawn sacrifice.
Is Maxime going to take the d4 pawn and walk into preparation? Because definitely Magnus has got something up his sleeve. Queen a4 check is not regular. E4, there are lots of options. E4 as a main move as well. Definitely took Maxime by surprise. And now what is the idea? Because d4 can just be picked up. So knight d4, knight d4.
Yeah, but here is the trick that you can't take with the queen because of knight b5, and you don't really want to take. I mean, then there is this double attack, and if you take with the bishop on d4, also probably white goes, I believe, knight b5, tries to hit the dark square bishop, and if he gets the dark square bishop and then maybe plays some bishop d2 long castle, it's going to be very good compensation. So Maxim wanted to avoid this, and he went for castles d5 knight b4.
Is prepared, very risky position. So you just decide to develop your pieces and castle. I think that should be the approach when you're playing blitz in general.
Well, in general, this is a very logical and legitimate choice, but often, you know, the trick is that you signal your opponent that, aha, you see, I want to sacrifice the pawn for initiative, but deep inside, you are hoping that your opponent will believe you and will not call, I don't know if it's a bluff or semi-bluff or whatever. Of course, if Magnus has played it, definitely he believes that he has some compensation. I don't know exactly about the objective value. And the way how Maxim reacted is kind of the very natural, yeah, let me just castle d5 knight before, I'm gonna go a5. If you kick my knight away with a3, I'm gonna go back and then try to break your pawn structure with c6 or e6. And let's not forget, White's king is still in the center.
And Maxim deciding to reroute his knight from a6 after a3, the only square really where you can retreat to. He's aiming for the knight c5 square. All these decisions have burned a lot of time on his clock. He's down by more than a minute, and that is not pleasant for sure.
Yeah, absolutely not. And it's the very first game. So basically, Magnus signals to his opponent that, you know, you're not going to have an easy match. You are not going to get positions you are hoping to get or where you are familiar with. I mean, I want to disbalance you right from the beginning, force you to spend time. And that's going to be tough on Maxim. I mean, he has to fight back.
He has to fight back. Magnus is taking a think here, and the first move that comes to mind is you're threatening knight c5, bishop e3 to stop it. But instead, Magnus goes bishop to g5.
Yeah, bishop g5. Okay, what Magnus says that I want to provoke my opponent to play the move h6, and then I'm going to come back to e3. But Maxim says, no, I want to get my chance. And can he go for some f5? Or is that too much? But f5 feels like a move that is very much in the street. Okay, Maxim goes first a4. It's also very logical. But now Magnus stabilized, and this is exactly the position, you know, when you don't get these typical breaks e6, c6 in time, then White just develops bishop e2 castles, and he takes perfect control. And this pawn on a4 runs always into these tactics that whenever you put your knight on b3 and trying to, for example, take on f3 and go for the d4 square, there are all kinds of tricks with knight takes a4 winning the pawn.
I have to say, Peter, I'm quite surprised with Magnus's decision to allow the knight to come to c5 so easily. It just felt very natural to play bishop e3 because sure, you're provoking h6, but Maxim doesn't have to play h6. And now knight b3 and these ideas of bishop f3 and knight d4 looks like it would be giving black a bit of play. After knight b3, if you go short castle, do you just trade on f3 and jump to d4 immediately?
Yeah, but I mean, okay, it's not the end of the world. You jump to d4, I move my queen, and finally, how long you can keep this knight on d4? You might have to give up your knight. Then it's already questionable. You really want to trade that strong knight for this light square bishop, but this light square bishop is only a little bit dubious until it stays on f3. If I move it back to e2 or activate it on g4, then this bishop might be very, very good. The big question, and look at the time, the times equalized.
And now he comes back to e3.
Yeah.
So he's made sure that black is not able to jump on d4. And I think if Maxim was to take on f3, the idea is to take with the g pawn and not the bishop, because if you take bishop f3, then perhaps black has the option to go knight c4.
Yeah, exactly. I mean,
and we see that on the board. So bishop f3, keeping the pawn structure alive, would have actually resulted in knight c4 giving a lot of play. Gf3 is a very, very thematic capture in these positions as well.
Yeah, and White has this dangerous potential expansion on the king side with f4, e5, taking control of the dark squares, and then also go h4. I mean, and look at this now, after queen d7, black can never play c6. Yeah, Magnus goes h4, the knight on b6 is vulnerable. And how do you create counterplay with black?
Yeah, the dream is to get a break like c6 or e6. c6 is not possible because the b6 knight hangs. Is e6 an option here?
Yeah, I mean e6, but e6 runs into bishop b5 and queen e7, maybe d6. Is that something that...
That's a really nice line.
could bother. I mean, you still have queen d8, but it's not. I'm not sure that this is what you really want.
No, this is definitely not what you want. He's gone for e5. That's interesting because bishop b5 is still an option and queen e7 runs into d6. So which means that after bishop b5, he perhaps wants to retreat to d8.
Or to d6.
To d6.
Yeah, can I go to d6? Then the question, does this taking on a4 capture work in some way? But I feel like I will have some knight d4 trick. It's not the end of the world. And now slowly we are witnessing a bullet game. Look at this. The game has just started and Maxim is down to 1 minute and Magnus has 1.5 minutes on the clock. It's not much of a difference.
And Magnus instead chooses to put pressure on the c7 pawn, immediately targeting queen c7. Rook c8 is played and he goes for h5. I think it's still not so dangerous on the king side because it's difficult for white to get the queen over to consider.
Yeah, but it's just too risky because, I mean, if h-file opens and then suddenly I open up the a to g8 diagonal and give a check, then it's going to be very bad news. He goes f5, but this is complete desperation. This is complete desperation.
I mean, it's 20 seconds on the clock. It's time to be desperate. Otherwise, you just get steamrolled. And he's tried to create play. He's done it by f5. But correct or not, I like the approach to change the dynamics of the position.
Yeah, I mean, f5 would be nice if the h5 would be closed. I mean, let's just imagine white pawn on h2 and black pawn on h7, and we would say that, yeah, black has perfect counterplay. But with this, and look at this, Magnus goes ef. Very interesting.
It is interesting because queen f5, a queen trade would perhaps not have worked because after trading queens, white has this trick of knight c7, picking up the knight on b6. So he had to take with the g pawn. And now look at black's king. It looks extremely exposed, but the point is, how can white make the most of it? The king on e1 stops the rook on d1 from coming into play on the g file. The only thing that white has going is the rook on h1. I actually think it's okay, d6, so making play on the other side, but black can take cd6 here. And he's gone for it because it hits the queen on c2.
But queen d3, and the big question, what you do, because now the light squares, now the knight on b6 is hanging, and this was the danger I was feeling that, you know, if these light squares open up and I don't see the way how you stop. Now queen d5, you trade on f7, take on c4, knight takes d6 is already a fork, for example. Winning
I think that is the critical line here. He's taken queen
c4. But of course, yeah, even has this and knight d6. Okay, this is complete.
And now knight d6.
Resignation, yeah.
This is the danger that Peter was talking about 5 moves ago about opening the h file.
Yeah, no, I mean, this f5 was okay, but with 20 seconds on the clock, Maxim also understood that, okay, there is no way back. I mean, I'm going to lose this game anyway, but f5 just speeded things up.
That was quite an incredible finish by the world champion, just extremely to the point, finds the blow, makes it happen. Maxim immediately ending it, going on to the next game because he knows that these 5 minutes, the 5-minute segment is very critical for him to score points in. And I've seen that we often see this opening. We often see the players going for the royal pairs in these structures in Blitz.
Yeah, in Blitz, also in classical, I mean, in all kinds of formats. Yeah, we have seen this position in the Jan Nepomniachtchi Magnus Carlsen match, I believe. Yeah, there was this match. Then Magnus, instead of castles, played the line with knight a5, c5. So now Magnus chooses the knight b8 setup. He likes this Breyer type of play. So knight b8 followed by knight b7 is kind of natural. Bishop d2 is also very natural for white because white wants to break on the queen side quickly with a4 before black manages to stabilize his forces. The big question is what you do now, because knight c5 is kind of a threat because it hits the bishop. Yeah, knight e2 is played, preparing that after knight c5, he can retreat to a2 and he's settling b2b for himself.
Yeah, as well, if you don't retreat knight e2, then if you make a move like h3, knight c5, bishop a2, b4, b3 comes with a tempo, and you need to avoid that because that pawn sacrifice just gives black a lot of play. And now if black was to go b4, white can just sidestep it with a move like bishop c4.
Yeah, he can sidestep, but still, yeah, I like the move b4 because I feel like this knight on c5 is quite nice. And if you play a move like bishop c5, I might just go bishop e6 and I trade the light square bishop. I mean, I don't really see big problem for black, to be honest.
Black does look like he solved all his opening problems. Magnus Carlsen taking an early lead in his match, but we know, and bishop c4 played because I think b3 was a threat that black had to destroy white's pawn structure, and you have to find a way to fight that. But with a move like bishop e6 or even c6 with the idea to go d5 is something that gives black a lot of play in this position. I like black's position already, and c6 played.
Yeah, c6 played. I mean, I also like this position a lot because, okay, this is a typical Ruy Lopez. I mean, this anti-Spanish because 6d3 is kind of some anti-Spanish. It can be anti-Marshallish, but basically you just avoid any other system. And now that black managed to get his knight to c5 and get this pawn structure ready to break with d5, it looks very comfortable. So far, what I see actually is that Magnus is dominating not the game, he's dominating the opening phase. And Magnus, if he dominates the opening phase, then it's very, very powerful.
That's an interesting observation. So now d5 is a possibility immediately, and he's gone for it without much thought. And that's a piece sacrifice. He wants to go knight c6 though. So after dc4, let's try that out, Peter. dc4 runs into knight c6 and queen c7. You've got bishop, you've got knight b8.
No, you probably take on b8 because it's nice that after knight g4 you have the bishop f4 intermezzo. And if you take on b8, that's already not okay. Anyway, it's nice position, but maybe then white has time to go f3, stabilize the e4 pawn, and then threaten d4. So something like cd, rook d8 can already be answered by d4. That would be a dream scenario for white. But does black has the move queen c7 here? I mean, can I play queen c7?
But then queen e5 is not a threat because you've got d4. So perhaps white could just trade on d5 and fall back with the bishop.
Yeah, well, in any case, very complicated. And now we see this very first line with queen c7, takes. I'm expecting f3.
So queen b8 on the board and f3 just to consolidate the center. After he's traded on c5. That's an interesting choice. He wants to go d4 next.
Yeah, that was the other option, but I was not 100% sure if any of this tactical jump with knight g4 will do me any harm or not. But maybe it's not. Maybe it's more ghost than real stuff.
So d4 played, and now the question is, where does black retreat with the bishop? You can't go to d6 because that walks into a fork with e5. Do you maintain it on this diagonal with bishop b6? Is that the way to go after d4? Because like you pointed out, knight g4 threatens queen h2, but lots of ways for white to counter it. He could go knight g3, he could go e5.
Yeah, and
then also go h3 next.
Yeah, it's very hard to judge. On the other hand, if Magnus goes for rook d8, he wants to keep the pressure somehow.
That makes a lot of sense because white cannot sidestep the pin with the queen because the d4 pawn hangs.
Yeah, but okay, if I do f3, for example, okay, I wanted to do ideally f3 with the bishop on e3. I did not want to give up, but yeah, there were too many tactical possibilities there, so it's understandable that Maxim decided to trade it off. But what to do now?
All right, so white actually has rook and 2 pawns for 2 pieces. But the position is incredibly dynamic. And I see our engine, our evaluation bar. Actually, I can't see our evaluation bar, Peter. What is the computer evaluation just in this position?
Well, I mean, it's not really relevant because it says that black is maybe tiny bit better. I mean, believes that black has no problems, but it's often that the computer believes that, with 2 pieces, I'm super strong. But humanly speaking, I mean, if white stabilizes here, then it will be easier for white to play. The big question is maybe Magnus will be so super precise. Yeah, bishop d6, exactly. That was the point behind rook d8, that you force some more weakness. And h5.
Magnus really likes the h-pawn advance these days. We see him with white breaking with h4, h5 and going for the mate, and with black going h5, h4. So the moment there's a weakness with g3 or g6, the h-pawn marches forward. And it does look like he's created some weaknesses around the white's king. Very often when you've got two pieces for the rook, the whole idea is to expose your opponent's king because you want to create an attack. And now he could also look at perhaps transferring the queen from queen c7 to queen d7. He's gone knight h5, hitting the g3 pawn. Magnus is really provoking white to push his pawns.
Yeah, and look at this. Maxim said, enough, I want to be active myself, and goes rook a5. This is very interesting, because if you go g6, then he might just take on h5, rook h5, and then queen d2, and suddenly start his own agenda on the king side.
We might be seeing that g6 on the board, so a sacrifice with rook h5, because he's gone queen e1, keeping things under control. Perhaps felt that after queen d2, there was bishop f8, trying to keep it all together. Trades on c3. I like this trade because it opens up the queen file. Now Magnus's queen is eyeing the b2 square if required and when required. And how are we evaluating this position? Because to me, it just looks like a game for not 3 results, but 2 results. Either white wins or black wins.
Yeah, but now there is also some danger. There is some, he goes queen b2. I was calculating the line h bishop take g3, but it did not work finally. But it was also super sharp. I mean, just very quickly take a look. I was spending some time on this line with check, because where do you go with your king? King f2 runs into knight d3, king g1 runs into knight d3, and you lose the knight. You have to go here, and then even some move like king g7 followed by rook h8 looked very, very messy. But of course, it's very hard to understand where it leads. So queen b2 was the more natural way, rook f2, bishop d7. Magnus down to 30 seconds on the clock.
Maxim, a big time advantage, and the position is anything but clear. So this could be Maxim's moment to bounce back. He goes g4, taking advantage of the fact that black can't go knight f4 check, because the rook on f2 will then hit the queen on b2. So the knight actually has to fall back. He's gone for h3 first. That's an interesting move. So king h3 would mean that the g4 pawn is under pin, and perhaps gives black the chance to go king g7, rook h8. So sidestepping all of that, he goes king g1.
Yeah, and queen b6. I mean, incredible how Magnus feels, this kind of all intermediate moves here. h3 now, queen b6. They seem not to work together, but in fact they do, and that's why it's quite amazing that he keeps such a vision.
I was just thinking about that, just looking at the whole board, because you see h3 and your focus is on the king side, but then he finds this counter attack with queen b6, hitting the rook on a5, something that's very easy to forget that it's hanging. And Magnus really playing tempo by tempo, and the move queen b6 will make possible knight f4 on the next move, because now the rook on f2 doesn't hit the queen on b2 anymore.
Exactly, yeah, that was the big point behind queen b6. And now it's Maxim's turn to think, because if black gets knight f4 in and you are forced to trade on f4 and black bishop ends up on f4, then this pawn on h3, bishop f4 is almost like a winning structure by itself. And Maxim is burning his clock. He's going down to 30. Yeah. And
wow.
He probably practically had to do it. Good or bad, he had to do it.
Right, Peter. But this, and now Magnus just blitzing out. So he's up a piece, but for 3 pawns. But that doesn't really matter, because I think it's white's king that's under a lot of pressure with that pawn on h3, which is really killing all squares around the king and creating back rank weaknesses. He still has rook f1. So it's not mate, but looks very close.
Yeah, this is practically over, and not the clock situation.
He picks up the c3 pawn.
And
this is over. Peter,
yeah,
this is over.
Yeah.
Chat, this is over. And take a look at that. Maxim down to 6 seconds, but time does not matter right now because his position is in shambles.
Yeah, I mean, Checkmate.
And again, just finishing it beautifully for the second time in a row. Bishop f2. Take a look at that. Rook f2 runs into queen a1 and king h1 runs into bishop f3 or queen f3 mate. Bishop f2, another beautiful roundup by the world champion.
Yeah, so far, I mean, Magnus is dominating the match. The big question, will he? Yeah, and he keeps on. You know, this is typical because, and Maxim sidesteps with bishop d7. Okay.
So Magnus sticking to what he played in the first round and took Maxime by surprise in Grunfeld. Now, it's not easy to surprise a player like Maxime in his pet opening. But the first game really went incredibly well for Magnus and he repeats it. But it looks like Maxime, maybe with his trainer or with his second or with his friend, has managed to come up with some idea for this.
I'm not sure if they are involved yet, but definitely if the match continues like this, then he will need support, because in order to fight back, in order to get chance, he needs to get nice positions. I mean, positions where he can play. But maybe this a5 is a very nice touch.
So the point of a5 is that you want to go knight b4, hitting that c2 square, which would be a family fork if you allow it, and also kills the queen on a3 with a move like knight b4. Magnus sticking to his plan of going h4, h5 and hitting on the h file, knight a6. So what he wants to do is bring the other knight on b4. And queen a5 is not possible because knight b4 would then be absolute disaster for white. The rook would hit the queen, lots of threats on c2. It looks like Maxime has this figured out, because take a look at the time situation, Peter. Magnus down by a minute.
Yeah, down by a minute. It's a very big question whether Maxime is just bluffing, thinking that, okay, I'm 0-2, let me just play as fast as possible because I had problems on the clock, I had problems with the position, and try to play as messy as possible. Or maybe it was really a very great advice from someone, but I mean, the game starts so quickly. How do you pass any message to your protege? I just don't know physically how it's possible.
I think how it's done, or how I can imagine it, is that, you know, whoever is the trainer that they're working with or the friend is following the action. So while he went on to that second game, perhaps, you know, he got some help during that time that, okay, if this happens again, try and go for this line, because you definitely get the feeling that Maxime is more confident and better prepared for queen a4 this time.
Yeah, definitely. Or maybe he just finally, after the game, he remembered, yeah, that what to do. Another way to try to get, you know, this is not just I'm trying to find some ideas, that when you see that your previous game is about to end, then you just don't resign. You wait like 15, 20 seconds, and during this time already you get some message or something for the next game, yeah.
And queen d6 on the board, and Riskakor is saying that, is he looking at a Naka Fedor recap? I really hope not, because we all want a close match. Magnus leading by 2 points, but a very critical game for Maxime, Peter, because I think he needs to bounce back right now. If he goes down by 3 points, that's just too much of a distance for the world champion.
Well, since sorry, I predicted that after the 5+1 section it will be equal score, so I really need Maxime to bounce back. Yeah, I want him to get confidence, because if he gets confidence, then I'm pretty sure that he can get a very big fight. And that's what I don't care about the final. Finally, okay, Hikaru is in the final, it's fantastic, but I think the audience was the biggest winner that we could witness this great match between these players.
All right, so 8-6 played. And Maxime thinking where to move the bishop. To me, it looks like you have to go bishop f6, but that doesn't really run into knight e4 because you have queen b4 check. Why is Maxime thinking? What is the other alternative to bishop f6?
Yeah, the position is just so complex. For example, I mean, how to evaluate this type of position as well, because this bishop is trapped. It can be captured whenever he wants. And bishop f6, e4. That after knight takes c3, there was e5 intermediate move, trapping the bishop. That was the trick.
That's actually a really nice intermezzo. And the point is that the next move, you don't pick up the bishop, you simply pick up the knight, and the black's bishop has no square to move.
Exactly. So that was the trick. And after e4, a4 had to be played. and now it feels like it's more of a bluff. Yeah, we have been praising Maxim's preparation, or maybe preparation or bluff or whatever, but Magnus is calling the bluff, and so far he's doing great.
So Magnus simply falls back with the queen to c2, but this does allow an additional tempo of knight b4, hitting the queen one more time, because he needs to either play that or knight c3. The problem with knight c3 might be that white can still go e5, and you don't solve your problem of the bishop.
Yeah, you don't solve. And okay, knight db4. No, he goes knight takes c3. Very interesting. What does he? And Magnus just takes back now, b takes c3. Interesting. I mean, maybe this e5 was possible, but maybe it was just too complex, because previously it was, I believe, winning, but with this a4 queen c2, there was some square for the black queen with queen e6 to pin the king, and
Magnus decides not to go for the complex lines and picks up the knight on c3, and immediately Maxim hitting in the center with e5. I think these breaks are so important in the Grunfeld. You have to get a central break to manage to equalize your problem. But in this situation, there was no other alternative, because the bishop on f6 actually stands trapped if you don't play e5. And now Magnus thinking how to react to this move. Bishop e3 is something that definitely comes to mind to keep the development going. But I think what black wants to do then is to grab on d4 and go queen b4 check.
Yeah, somehow bishop e3 is a desired move, but yeah, black seems to be ready for it. And look at this, Magnus down to 35 seconds on the clock. I mean, he needs to be practical. Yeah, and this bishop takes a6 short castle, I think, just says that, okay, you know what? I mean, I don't want to be provoked. Let me just play natural moves. I have a good position anyway. And let me play as quickly as possible. Maybe when he will take at some point d takes e5, I would not be surprised.
Interesting. And Caribbean Knight is actually informing us that apparently queen d6 was a horrible blunder. We'll have to go back to that if we get time, because we know that right now the action's pretty hot and the world champion is down to 30 seconds. Maxim up by 2 minutes on the clock.
Yeah, I mean, okay, queen d6 was just a blunder because this h6 allowed this e4, and he could not take. I mean, I simply believe that Maxim thought that e4 is never possible because he takes on c3 and the pawn on e4 is under attack, but there was this intermediate move with e5. But okay, let's focus at this stage, because
Maxim needs to convert this one, Peter, because, you know, he solved his problems. Magnus is really down on the clock. If Magnus survives this, that is not good news for the French fans at all. Knight e5 played. You don't want to pick up the pawn on e5 because this diagonal of a1 to h8 would be absolutely monstrous after bishop e5, d e5, queen e5. There's bishop b2, queen c3 coming in. So Maxime decides not to go for that. Instead, he plays bishop b5, bringing that rook on a6 into the game. He could always go rook d6 or rook e6 or rook c6 when it's possible. Bishop f4, taking advantage of the fact that the e5 knight hangs, he plays c5. And now rook b1.
Now actually, Magnus is maybe just much better, because once Maxim missed the chance of taking on e5 and let him go bishop f4, rook a b1. Now, how do you protect your bishop from b5? And Magnus is down to 14 seconds, but he has 1 second increment. If he gets a clearly better position, I think then he will be merciless regardless of the time. And the fact was, in my opinion, that if Magnus would have lost this game, or if he loses this game, then he will be very angry, because he will remember that
Bishop
he was
D2
completely
now?
winning out of the opening.
Peter, bishop d2 now? Isn't that game over?
Well, it's kind of game over, but queen e5, it still continues. Bishop
And now
c7.
bishop c7, queen g5 has to be played to keep the support on the b5 bishop, or queen h5. And then e5 perhaps. Is e5
Then e5, yeah. This is the point, because if Maxim can continue the game, then I think that he has chances, because Magnus is just down to 5 seconds on the clock.
And queen g5, e5 was not possible because of bishop c6, which would threaten mate on g2. So queen g5 was the only move. Queen h5 would run into e5, and now a queen trade with queen c1.
Wow, Magnus played
Magnus down
bishop
to 3
f4.
seconds. 3 seconds on the clock.
Yeah, I mean, let's see how Magnus will handle this, because Maxim is playing bullet game, but I mean, he has 1 minute advantage.
1 second on the clock. This is Maxim's chance. He has to do it.
That's
and
it, it's finished, yeah.
Maxim scores his first win, a very important one. The game starts off immediately, but 2-1, we've got a match on our hands.
Absolutely. I mean, it was very, very crucial. And I mean, Magnus was not only leading 2-0, but he had a golden opportunity to win a third game effortlessly, because right out of the opening, once he tricked Maxim there with this h5 and h6, then things got completely out of control. But time, yeah, we see the time is so important. And if you manage to hang on, like Maxim managed to avoid, I'm pretty sure we have seen the bar jumping very high that Magnus is completely winning, but this queen g5 kept the game going, and the move f4, which probably would have won, was finally not played by Magnus.
The chat is going crazy about the fact that Maxim just flagged Magnus in the last game. We don't see that happen every day.
Yeah, absolutely not. And in the 5+1 segment, yeah, it's not 3+1, it's not 2 minutes, not 1 minute chess, it's 5+1.
There is an increment.
Yeah, with an yeah, it's incredible, yeah. And now we see a complete, I mean, the position looks like a Caro-Kann, but it's not exactly like a typical Caro-Kann, since white's pawn is on d3. Usually this white pawn is always on d4, but the structure itself with e takes f6 is very much in the Caro-Kann type of spirit. Knight d7. Okay, this is somewhat strange. I mean, one could argue that white has a very nice position. I would just say that, yeah, it looks like you are the one deciding when you take the black bishop on d6. But I mean, black's position is ultra solid with this structure.
When Magnus says you're not going to take that bishop anymore because he simply falls back with it, and now he wants to try and get f5 at a good moment to hit this knight on e4 away from the center. Queen b6 also attacks the b2 pawn. I wonder if white missed his opportunity to take on d6.
Yeah, I mean, it's the typical stuff that Magnus let it happen. So he played the move knight d7, basically signaling that I don't mind if you take the bishop. Yeah? And then exactly because of this feeling that, aha, my opponent actually doesn't mind if I take, then you feel like, okay, I'm not going to take it. But one move later, you might regret it already.
It's too late to do any of that. So now queen b2 runs into rook b1, and you pick up the b7 pawn. So the pawn is still not hanging. That would be a lot of play for white. So definitely black is not going to go queen b2 here. He goes bishop d5. What black again wants to do is play f5 on the next move.
Yeah, just to stabilize the structure. Now queen c7 I'm expecting.
Are we going to see a repetition with queen c7, bishop f4?
Well, it's possible, but it's still unlikely, I believe. But let's see.
Just so diplomatic in your answers always.
Simply the point is that, yeah, Maxim is 1 point still behind, and he has the white pieces. You know, if he tries to, I mean, it's too early to play for any.
The bishop falls back. You don't want to give up the bishop pair on e4, so you fall back with the bishop on e6. And now the question is, so I like what Maxim is doing. He's going b3. He wants to advance d4. He's defended the c4 pawn, and immediately Magnus decides to take advantage of b3 by hitting that pawn structure with a5, a4.
But actually, he could have played d4. You know, he could have played d4 because bishop b4 can be answered by knight c3, and white could have got harmony. But it's again, you know, you feel like, after a5, I have to stop bishop b4. This is blitz. I mean, in a rapid game, you might, after like 10 seconds, realize that, okay, I don't have to worry about bishop b4. But here in blitz, you don't have these 10 seconds in every move. Yeah, you have to go with your instinct, and if you say that you think anyway that ace is a useful move, then let's just do it a tempo. Yeah, queen c2. It's very hard to judge and very hard to play for both sides. I mean, okay, white wants to go d4 because then bishop f5 runs already into knight takes f6 tricks. So if black wants to activate his bishop, then he should maybe do it now. It's another question that maybe he wants to go h6 and f5, but it's tough. Yeah, let's just say you go h6, I play d4. You go f5, I go knight c3, and then, for example, after knight f6, I can play a move like bishop f4. It does seem like I have control. I even don't have to move this bishop.
And we see all of that happen on the board. He's gone for knight d2 instead. So perhaps what he wants to do after knight f6 is reroute the knight to e5 through f3.
Yeah, or not to play bishop f4 yet, to play knight f. Yeah, okay, it's... I'm not somehow I felt like knight c3 was more natural, but okay, it's very hard to say. And I believe Magnus has more experience in this e takes f6 structure, because I do remember him using in the Caro-Kann main variation also fourth move knight f6 and taking ef6. Let's just remember the game against Duda, that completely crazy game from Stavanger tournament.
And knight f3, aiming for the e5 square, Magnus stops it with bishop d6. In turn, he will be looking to jump his own knight to e4 at some point. A move like c5 you never want to make with white, because that would give the d5 square to black for eternity.
Yeah, this bishop d6 was my concern, and then I realized also that even if I placed my knight on c3, black still had bishop d6. Then there was one argument that with the knight on c3, maybe I could have played knight e2, insisting of using the f4 square. And now...
Oh, wow. So he's gone knight e5, Peter, taking advantage of the rook on e1, so that when your queen comes to e5, he can jump bishop b6 and a discovered attack and pick up the rook. So you can't really pick up that pawn.
Ideas, yeah. Knight g4 played, attacking the e5 pawn.
And you can't go bishop f4 because there was g5 coming in, and then black would take the e5 pawn with the knight. Just to quickly show that didn't work, so he had to go queen c3. Again, the e5 pawn was immune because of the rook on e1 and discovered idea, so black just trades the knight for the bishop, and now aiming to double on the d file. I actually like black's position here, Peter, because there is no way for white to fight for the d file.
Exactly, and not just this, but also the bishop on g2. Yeah, I mean, the bishop on e6 is so much more useful. Bishop on g2 hits this very strong black's pawn structure with b7, c6. It's the ideal. I mean, let's just imagine black pawn would be on b6, then the bishop on g2 would make perfect sense. And yeah, you take the open file, you double with the rooks. I mean, especially in the blitz, how do you defend such positions from the white side? It's not easy.
Very difficult. Bishop f1, he wants to play rook d3, and he's gone for it because it's really the only way. He needs to trade off one pair of rooks to neutralize this file, but black gains control of the d file anyway. So yeah, white wants to go rook d1 next. If black was to take rook d3, bishop d3, queen d7, white would simply fall back to either c2 or e2 and then get the other rook to d1. And that's how he plans to fight for the d file.
Yeah, well, but if you move the bishop, then I might enter with queen d2. I'm not sure you're going to be able, true. Yeah.
So you perhaps, it's been played, we might see queen d7, and maybe the accurate way to go about this is to play rook d1 first, and yeah, then move the bishop.
Yeah, but still, I mean, there are all kinds of tricks with a4 as well. I mean, rook d1, queen d4, but queen d4, okay. Also, pawn is hanging, you can take bishop c2, it looks quite solid.
So the question is, he's gone for queen d7. I am expecting white to go rook d1, played instantly, and Peter, your move a4 on the board.
Yeah, but the big question is what happens if you move your bishop, like bishop c2? I don't see how the queen sacrifice work. Yeah, queen d1, it was my...
And now he's going to take on b3 and hit the c4 pawn.
Yeah, but okay, then...
With the b7 pawn.
Okay, black has all the chances to make a draw, but I mean, not more.
He's taken on b3, the b7 pawn is attacked, but I think black is going to go rook d4 or rook c1 to hit the c4 pawn and create. He decides to defend the b7 pawn instead.
You know, I think that maybe one of the mistakes Magnus had, that he missed that the rook on d1 is hanging. He felt like after queen b3, going to play b5, use the pin, and then play with queen bishop against queen, and he's the one who is calling the shots. Now he's on the defensive and down to 20 seconds.
I think that's very insightful, Peter. There's a big chance that that's exactly what happened, missing that the queen on b3 hits the rook on d1, so no time to go b5. Instead, now Magnus trying to create play on the king side with g5.
Yeah, he needs to get his king to g6, but I mean, white's position is so easy to play. White's position is very easy to play. The rook from d7 can never move. And white has also some ideas like queen b4, queen c5, and then a6, break the structure, take on c6. It's looking bad, yeah.
And I think the last few moves by black just demonstrate that Magnus doesn't know exactly what to do here. He's just trying to hold on like a fortress. But the problem is this plan that white can always go a6 when he's attacking the c6 pawn. And Magnus has managed to gain some time on the clock. He's up by 16 seconds. The way he's playing, it's clear that he's looking for a fortress here.
Yeah, he's just trying to sit down. But yeah, white's king on e3 is very, very solid. And now I'm expecting somewhere this, he goes c5.
And queen b6 and a6 is an idea. But after queen b6, black can play bishop d5. So he's gone queen a4. Rook d5, hitting the pawn. And now he gives the c6 pawn.
Yeah,
which has to be taken.
Yeah, and I'm surprised. I mean, what exactly is his idea? He goes a5, and he says that thanks to this e6 bishop, I'm covering c8, and it might not be so easy for you to.
So black's plan to create a fortress is to somehow trade the a pawn for the c pawn and just say that you can never break on the king side. That makes sense, but clearly Maxime has a different plan. He's gone for e6 break. I like that because now always there's queen c3 checks on the board.
Yeah, of course, e6 is practically the winning move because you get access to the dark squares, to the opponent king, and you also have king d4, king d5, king f6 idea. That's why Magnus had to play rook c4, down to 10 seconds each.
And now next threatening king d4 because then rook d1 wouldn't work. He first hits the rook and now he'll go king d4.
Yeah, and that's it. Now it's lost.
Incredible play by Maxime.
And now king d6, king e7. And then queen f8 check, king f6 and checkmate. Yeah, that's it.
So there's a mate on g7 coming up. Maxime Vachier-Lagrave equals the score. Peter, your prediction looking good right now.
Well, it's just the beginning. I don't know. I mean, this match is gonna be crazy. Just the previous one. I mean, it's completely out of control. I mean, the logic has finished completely because it was not like Maxime was playing so fantastically the last two games that he didn't give Magnus a chance. But somehow he was the one who controlled the clock better, and he was the one who got more lucky.
You know, I've got to love the chat because in the beginning, everyone felt that Magnus was the favorite and everyone felt that very strongly. But now with these two big Maxime wins, everyone's saying, go Maxime, go MVL.
Well, I mean, everybody understands that that's what we need to get a great match. Yeah? And we are seeing this great match. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, I did not expect anything else, but after the first two games, I was really worried. I mean, I was really worried, I have to be honest. But okay, now everything is under control. We can enjoy the match fully. And this is very interesting because it was like anti-Najdorf weapon with third move bishop c4, but actually it ended up some kind of a Ruy Lopez. I mean, a typical Spanish structure where in anti-martials we have seen this, that white was going for the d5 square, but it turned out that this d5 square is not as important in these positions, and because strangely enough, black can just create his own agenda, own play without really paying attention to this.
And I love the way Maxime's playing. He's really going for the king side attack, and knight e7 wants to transfer that knight to g6 and just start pushing those pawns, as Yas would say. Push 'em, baby.
Yeah. Okay, it's not so easy to push them. That's the point, because thanks to this very nice, I mean, this h3, knight h2 is a typical way of, you see how the queen is controlling the h5 square, and Magnus made sure that his pawn lands on a5. This is very, very important because he wants to play a5. Now the pawn on b7 is fixed, so he has his own trumps on the queen side. But if black manages to push something here, yeah, and he goes g4, wow. I mean, this is, I mean, what is this exactly? It's all very interesting. Yeah, h take g4, but how you proceed? Yeah, f3, you had to. And then I believe his idea after g takes f3 is to play bishop f6, bishop g5. So g takes f3 is maybe not, but okay, it's also 2 pawns. Then I can go king g, for example, just gf, you go bishop f6, I go king g2, I put my rook on h1, I go knight f1, knight g3, and says that, okay, my knight is coming to f5 and I'm 2 pawns up. I'm not really understanding this. h5 played as well. I mean, Maxim said if I gave 1 pawn, I gave a 2nd pawn, let me give the 3rd pawn, but Magnus, after grabbing 2, he rejects the 3rd one and just makes a stabilizing move, king g2, and it looks like that's all he needed. Look at this king on h7, thanks to the bishop on b3. This king is in big danger. What was Maxim thinking about?
Not much. That push and baby strategy just did not work at all, Peter. And this bishop on b3, opposite color bishops, the king on h7 is in the kill zone. The only square is to g6. All white has to do is play a move like queen e2, queen e3, queen h3, rook h1 played. Black's idea is to go queen g5 at some point, but even that can be just simply met by f3. If white gets a successful queen transfer to the h file, it's all over. But I think what black intends to do next is go rook h8 and trade off these rooks.
Yeah, but I mean, in this structure with the good bishop against the bad bishop, if you trade too many pieces, you only can survive if you manage to trade all the heavy pieces. Then it's okay. But if just one pair of rooks remain, then the endgame is hopelessly lost. And even with queens on the board, it's what, bishop f6, now maybe g5, queen h5 is just checkmate. I mean, it's, but okay, g5, bishop g5, queen h5, king f6. It was not complete. I mean,
and now the bishop on g5 holds the h6 square. Definitely a better bishop than the one on g7, because now the h7 square is controlled by the queen. So the rook h1 doubling up on the h file is not as threatening. And now black has as well got some ideas of going rook f8 and creating a target along the f file.
Yeah, I mean, if you go rook f8, it's a game.
It's a game. We all want a game. That's all we ask for.
Yeah, and Magnus goes rook h1 and nice.
Rook f2, queen f2, rook f2, king f2, queen f6, queen f4. What white has is rook g8, rook f8. So the ideas of activating the queen doesn't work. Let's just quickly show that. And now rook g8 and rook f8 next would be
all like this. Yeah.
Yes.
It's the same. Yeah. So this is the idea. And in this case, it was, I mean, basically, but queen d7. Okay, it doesn't really matter. Basically, what I wanted to say that Magnus was in time to change one pair of rooks, which means that the f file will not be so important. But okay, black has, if he manages to trade all rooks, then there are chances to survive.
You know, we were talking about how black's king is the one that's in the kill zone, but black has managed to create some threats against the white king as well. And I think queen d7, a very interesting move, f3 to defend the g4 pawn. Again, taking on f3 just doesn't give black enough, but I like moves like queen b5 as well. Maxim decides to go queen g7, forcing Magnus to take a decision with that rook. Now that it's attacked, I do think, Peter, that Maxim has solved all his problems around the king.
Yeah, around the king, yes. I mean, and there is this potential idea that, but rook takes f8, bishop e6 followed by bishop f5 is one idea, but you are still in time with rook h8. and then you are kind of solid. If you trade the rooks, then even if white gets bishop to f5, you just sidestep with king f6, and you want to trade everything on the h file. So it's not elementary, it's not trivial at all.
It's not trivial. He's gone bishop e6 and now rook h8. As you suggested, Peter, the whole point is to trade off all the heavy pieces. White has 2 extra pawns, but the blockade on f4 and g5 make these pawns a bit of a non-event.
Yeah, now I really feel that black is kind of out of trouble, because the point is that even if you play like queen d1 and I trade on h1, for example, bishop f5 check, something like this, I wanted to show queen d1 so that you are able to capture with the queen. I can still insist on changing the queens because I'm settling bishop f4 and I would get active myself. And we are seeing something similar. I mean, maybe Maxim escapes in this game.
And kudos to Maxim. I think very resourceful play after getting into a lot of trouble right after the opening. Those crazy pawn sacrifices, which it looked like Magnus just sidestepped the entire attack and went on a pick up the pawn spree. But Maxim found his way to create chances. And now it looks like everything's under control. Because after the trade of the rooks, bishop f4, queen h2 threats, white will perhaps have to trade off the queens as well, and that should end in a draw. I am calling this a draw.
Yeah, I also have this feeling. And look at this, Magnus down to 20 seconds. Basically, I mean, he has to realize, and he's of course pissed right now because he knows that, yeah, he was winning. He got sloppy. And yeah, we see that people, I mean, the players just trade off everything.
And white will pick up the b5 pawn, black picks up the b4 pawn. White has got 2 extra pawns, but opposite color bishop and a blockade on f4 and g5. There's nothing that white can do. The bishop will go to c5, control d6, control a7. The king comes to g5, and everything is fine.
Yeah, everything is fine. Especially because Maxim has time, yeah, because that's the, I mean, white gonna activate his king towards d5 and pose some problems with king c6, that how you exactly gonna defend these things. But I mean, it's dangerous if you only have 2-3 seconds, but when you have more than a minute, it should be enough to understand how to deal with it.
I believe that black's ideal square for the bishop would be on c5 as your king gets closer.
Yeah, Maxim basically made sure that he's even in time to take, and now he gets back with the bishop to c5. And this is now completely draw.
And there we have it, almost.
He even goes like this. Okay, this is very stylish. This is very stylish. Yeah.
And that's it. That's a draw. So 2.5 to 2.5. We've got another 35 minutes almost of this segment remaining. I have to say, Peter, Maxim has been up on the clock in majority of the games. And in this format, that really counts for something.
Yeah, I think that after losing the first 2 games a little prematurely, exactly because he faced problems in the opening, he was then playing too slowly. And he was under pressure both on the clock and on the board. He decides to sidestep this, and also Magnus had sidestepped. Basically, it's a little bit strange for me that Magnus, after getting such a nice position from the Spanish, switches, because simply there was no reason to switch. I mean, it looked like things are under control. And now he picks up the Caro-Kann, which also suits Maxim very nicely, because here Maxim is in no pressure of showing something. He can always get some nice normal playable positions to play with.
And Frodo with a hot take that MVL is simply faster. He will kill Maxim. He will kill Magnus in the 3-1 segment. Wow, that's a very bold prediction, I have to say. But yes, in this match so far, we are seeing a faster Maxim, while Magnus has been struggling on the clock. A very, very close fight.
Yeah, but I think it's also, we should not be fooled by this. Simply the point is that when you are playing the 5+1 segment, you feel like you have time to think. And I'm pretty sure that once we will get to 3+1, then Magnus will adjust his play, because then he knows that he has to speed up right from the start. But in 5+1, usually you have the feeling that you have some luxury.
Until you don't. And now knight d5. Now knight d5 with the idea of stopping bishop f4, hitting the bishop on e3. I don't know if white can be too pleased about giving up this bishop.
No, not at all. Not at all. I mean, basically, I was explaining that against the Caro-Kann, you always get a chance of playing just something. I mean, I don't feel like this is exactly what you are dreaming of playing, because black has solved all his problems.
Bishop e7, 2 bishops on the board for Magnus, no weaknesses. Looks like he's gotten out of the opening in an absolute dream way. d4 controlling the e5, c5 square, also perhaps wants to activate the bishop to d3. But take a look at this, Peter. He decides to go for long castle. And I really like this because Magnus can aim for a quick...
I mean, okay, yeah, c3, b4, this is very typical. You know what I wanted to mention, that I don't recall any Caro-Kanns where black got the 2 bishops after like 12 moves. I just can't recall any game ever being played. So in this regard, I feel that this is already some kind of a new development in chess history, because this was impossible. But I mean, this long castle was maybe too ambitious. I think that Magnus was carried away by too much euphoria that, I got such a nice dream position, but exactly with long castle, he gave Maxim a chance to justify his play. Because if Magnus would have played short castle, white would be the one feeling that, okay, how do I play this? You castle long, immediately I get the game, and look at this. After letting the white knight get to e5, it's already looking good for white.
So bishop g6, and the aim is to try and trade off as many pieces as possible. Maxime says, no, I want the attack. Jumps in with a knight to c5. Knight d5 played. Is he going to go queen g3? Eyeing that diagonal, he chooses queen f3.
Yeah, because he's eyeing also this pawn on f7. It's, of course, you can protect it with rook hf8, but it 5 a6 and weaken black's structure even further. I mean, Magnus in big trouble here. Bishop d6. Certainly a much better move than what I proposed with rook f8, because this is much more harmonious. This is much more harmonious. Still, I mean, white has a dream position, and it's a blitz game. It's not only about how nicely you have, I mean, how nice position you have, but how easy it is to play. And now white has all the moves in the world, while it's so difficult for Magnus. Yeah, finally gives up his bishop. Heavy-heartedly, definitely heavy-heartedly.
And now white really wants to break with b5, while black hasn't really made progress on the king's side. So if white gets a successful b5 break, Peter, things could turn very ugly for Magnus.
Yeah, I think it's already even ugly, because, you know, it's such position that I would tell you that, okay, you can make three moves after another, and still I will be better with the white pieces. Yeah, and that's already signals that how passive the position is. Maybe he needs to go knight b6 and knight d7. Yeah, he goes knight b6. He has to trade this powerful knight from c5.
Yeah, that's a really nice defensive plan.
Yeah, but bishop a6, for example, bishop a6, knight d7. This is a very tactical line. And
well, let's try that, Peter. Let's have that on the board while the two think. Bishop a6, you can't take on a6 because knight a6 is a fork. So you've got to go knight d7, but then does white have the option to take on b7, which he must, because otherwise there's knight c5.
But how? Yeah, because bishop b7, knight c5. Okay, you still have bishop c6. It continues, because if you move the knight, I mean knight d7, you have rook b5 check, but it's answered by knight b6. And then you kick the bishop out with rook c8. It feels like white is not in time to get a4, a5 in.
And Magnus taking a think. I'm certain that he's looking at the bishop a6 line. After knight d7, can white go knight b7 instead of bishop b7?
Yeah, but then, yeah, he goes bishop b3, because then I'm taking on e5 with the tempo.
Right, and that Maxime decided against it, and he fell back with the bishop. I still like white's position.
Yeah, white has a nice position. On the other hand, it's black's position is now much better than it was few moves before.
I think bishop c2 is a very important move. It does trade off the last minor piece, but the point is that bishop on g6 was controlling the b1 square for the rook, and now white can at least try and double up, which is why Magnus immediately strikes in the center with e5, giving white no time to go rook b1, rook b2.
Yeah, so he needs to pin. Yeah, rook c2, rook c8 on the board.
And the question is, how does white react to this now?
Yeah, it's a big question. Yeah, he goes queen e4. Basically, he wants to threaten d5. Simply
so if you
to...
take ed4, white just goes queen e7.
Yeah.
So you can't take on d4.
That wins the game immediately.
That wins on the spot because rook e7, and then you have actually wherever the queen goes, there's a mate, Peter, with rook e8 and rook e7. So instead, he decided to sidestep with the rook.
Yeah, g6 first, d5, rook d8, yeah, queen h4, and this is very, very nicely played by Maxim. I mean, attacking the h7 pawn, you kind of invite it to h5, then when white finally gets to play e6, because getting it immediately is possible, but you have to watch out for rook d1 checkmate at the very end. Why I said possible, because after h5, e6, rook e6, f6, you have move like queen f6, which is quite promising. But on the other hand, maybe you even have time, but maybe not. Once you, I mean, black plays the move h5, maybe he wants to put the rook on e6 and just sit tight. In this regard, e6, yeah, and Maxim says immediately, I want to use this. I want to destroy your structure.
And he should trade off a pair of rooks. He's done it now. Queen f6, hitting the e6 and the g6 pawn.
Yeah. Yeah, this is very, very unpleasant.
Can black go queen a5 here?
No, I mean,
I like a6. I like a6 because it creates a lift for the king.
Yeah, I mean, you have to evacuate this king as far as possible. At the same time, white collects all the pawns on the king side. That's the big problem.
And queen e6, rook c5. You still can't take rook e6 because of rook d1 being mate. So queen e6 on the board, rook c5 will be played. And now even a move like rook e3, Peter, just keeping the c3 pawn alive, and you've got an extra pawn on the king side.
Yeah, but I mean, this rook on c5 serves a very nice purpose, and black king on a7 will feel very, very secure. Yeah, queen f6. Maxim wants to control the dark squares. He wants to maybe go rook e8 check and then queen d4 pin this rook. Also, maybe just to play g3, king g2 to get out of all these back rank issues. Queen f6 is a very nice move.
Very nice move indeed, with rook e8 in the air. And he sidesteps it because after rook e8, king a7, queen d4, he does have c5. So he's played queen d4 threatening mate, which is why he went c5 immediately to intercept this queen. And now you don't want to play c4 because he's gone for c4. I was just going to say that, how doesn't that run into rook e8, king a7, queen d4, rook a8?
Well, it did. I mean, it looked terrible, but also after queen d4, there is not much of a difference.
Yeah, and also in that line, the difference was that black had queen c5, as he's played right now.
Yeah, but I mean, okay, the endgame looks completely lost. I mean, just takes g4 and you start pushing these pawns.
And your rook on e1 is beautifully placed, just stopping black's king from coming to any defense. You've got your counterplay. I think just a trade-off of the queen, and Maxim could be on his way.
Yeah, and first rook e8 check. This was very, very important because now queen d8 check. Now it's not endgame, now it's checkmate.
So where's the mate, Peter? Rook e6, king b5, queen d7, and that's it.
That's it.
That's it. That's game over.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we are seeing exactly the same what we have seen in the Hikaru versus Wesley. There, Wesley was leading 2-0. I mean, not 2-0, but 3-1 after 4 games. And then Hikaru took the lead after winning 3 games. And now Maxim has done the same.
This is incredible. Chat, Maxim takes a lead with 1 point and 20 minutes, about 20 minutes remaining for this segment.
Yeah. This is now a very typical line of fighting against the Najdorf. I think it was Levon Aronyan who started playing this against Grishchuk, maybe in St. Louis. Then Also, Levon played it against Magnus, maybe in the Banter Blitz series, I believe, and then Magnus himself was playing this year. We have against Giri. Lot of developments here. It also shows that how much respect the top players have for Najdorf, and they know exactly that in order to fight against the Najdorf, you have to come up with new ideas. It's so heavily analyzed, and usually top players know it so well that you feel like in a blitz game, even in rapid, but especially in a blitz game, you want to sidestep it.
And Fish45 saying that this was unforeseen, that Maxime taking a lead. I mean, these are the world's best players in these formats. Definitely not expected, but again, too soon to call it anything. But this is exactly what you need to fight the world champion in this format, is a lead in this segment and the 3+1.
Yeah, and now also very interesting to see whether Maxime will be able to hang on to his lead, because one of the things I felt yesterday was the problem of Wesley, that whenever he grabbed the lead, Hikaru came back. Hikaru bounced back right away, and you could never really settle in with, now I'm in a comfortable situation. Yeah, it was always that the struggle was on, and if you manage to keep that lead for 1-2 games, and the pressure is always on your opponent that he has to come back, then he might be burning too much mental energy. But if he bounces back immediately, then he kind of gets this rhythm that, okay, whenever I'm things get out of control, I'm able to bounce back. That gives you this nice mental state when you start believing in that you are always capable of doing it. While if Maxime managed to keep this psychological pressure on the opponent, then you will always feel this, that somehow I'm not able to equalize. Knight takes c6, and this is the first thing. Black cannot capture with the b pawn because bishop takes c6, and now white got a stable structure with bishop d4. This is already something Magnus can start building on. Bishop f3.
This looks like the kind of position Magnus really enjoys playing, where you can potentially see a Magnus grind. Bishop f3, hitting that pawn on d5. It's an isolated pawn that's not going to go anywhere, and Magnus can just... The only thing is that the knight on c3 can't move. Ideally, you want to move that knight, bring it to f4 and play c3. But white will have to waste some time in doing that.
Yeah, Maxime immediately goes rook c4, just a tiny little move, but disturbing coordination, not so, rook d2. It might run into knight e4 at some point for some tactics. Not yet, but you always have to keep an eye on.
But I wonder if black should go rook c8 here, Peter, just to make sure that the knight on d2 is can't really move anywhere. But like you pointed out, that currently he's gone rook d8, because if you move that knight, black has the jump knight e4.
Yeah. So basically, the knight doesn't want to move away from c3 because it eyes the d5 pawn. Yeah, and Magnus wants to go rook a d1. Bishop takes f6, knight takes d5 is always in the air. Sometimes it leads to dead draw position, sometimes it's just very good. And now Maxime goes knight e4. What is this? So if I take knight e4, d4, bishop takes e4, he wants to go bishop g5, I believe. That's the trick. Disbalancing the rook. You have to go if you want to keep the bishop, but then the pawn on c2 is hanging. We might be seeing this.
So bishop g5, rook d3 on the board. Rook d3 looks like a forced move, because bishop e3, you just pick up the rook on d2 and pick up the bishop on e4. So you have to go rook d3, played. And now rook c2 picked up immediately. Is there any tactics here with bishop e3?
Well, okay, my bishop on g5 is protected. I'm not worried that much about it. But yeah, my rook on c2 is the one that I have to pay attention. So even maybe a move like bishop c3 can be played. Tricky position. It does feel like there should be something now.
The point that why I thought about, he's gone bishop g7.
Wow.
Oh, wow. But this should not be such a big deal because after king g7, you pick up the d8 bishop in the end, and then black just plays rook b2.
No, but the c2 rook is hanging. So if I take on d8,
oh, yes.
Capture, yeah.
That's actually really a good point because after king g7, rook d8, bishop d8, the rook on c2 hangs. And actually, black has to play rook d3 here or move the rook away.
Yeah,
he's gone for the trade.
But this is not just a healthy pawn up, and with this time control with 2 minutes 40 seconds on the clock, I mean, this is, I believe, a relatively easy win for Magnus.
Bishop g7, another very strong tactic by Magnus. I have to say that we've been seeing his vision is extremely strong today, Peter. We've been seeing him finish off games in style, find these tricks, while Maxime has been keeping an upper hand on the clock. So really both players showing their different skills.
Yeah, basically, I mean, okay, it seems like all the games when Magnus won, tactics worked on his favor, but in those games that he lost, it looked like, he was missing things. Yeah, it's just a very intensive match, and I feel like the players, Maxim understands that he has to play very fast, so he deliberately take the risk of maybe missing something, but the chance of him missing something is still very low, and that's why he take this risk. But this g4, bishop f1, going bishop g2,
he needs to keep both bishops on the board, otherwise it's just game over. And bishop g2, b6. So if white goes bishop d4, he's gone for it. The problem with b5 could be that bishop b7 could create problems for black's pawns. Instead, he goes bishop d8. And now can white just go f4 and start pushing the pawn and bring the king with king f2, king e3?
Exactly. I mean, it looks like there are no hopes. I don't know. I just don't really believe that there is any hope here.
The only hope is the time factor, because Magnus down to 1 minute 20 seconds while Maxime has over 2 minutes.
A long-term weakness. You put bishop e4, you can, there is no way from black to stop f4. You go king g2, king f3, king e3, and then f4. If he stops with bishop c7, if he doesn't stop, then even here you don't need to push it. Yeah, king g2, that's perfectly right.
And black trying to trade off pawns on the queen side. He needs to do that. He wants to get b4 in. The more pawns that get traded, the better it is. Finally, Magnus decides to go f4. It's time to play king f3 and f5. b4 played. You can't go a4 because that would come under attack with bishop b3 or bishop d7. Trades it off. And now does white want to play f5 next?
Well, I mean, white has only one problem, that he has too many good ideas. I mean, just advancing now on for example, g5, and then just advancing on the king side, but also the pawn on b3 and also the pawn on b4 already was weak, that white can even just march with his king towards the queen side, and that should be also. But yeah, Magnus goes for straight g5 and fg. Yeah, that's the most.
I like this. I like this because the h pawn is the strongest passer that you can have, and he's created it. So now he could also go bishop f3, and he's gone bishop e5. The main idea is to try and push the h pawn. King f4 next. All right, so g6 is in the air. He defends it with bishop c2. King f4, h5 is an idea now.
Yeah. I mean, okay, just look at white's bishops. Yeah, they are attacking, and at the same time, they are controlling everything.
But he needs to be a little careful now, because after h5, black has bishop d2, king g4, bishop d1, and white could be in trouble with the pawns. So h5 currently is not possible. Can he go bishop? He's gone h5. What happens after bishop d2 now?
Okay, he's still king g4, bishop d1 check, king h4, bishop e1 check, bishop g3. But I mean, why?
But then you trade off, and
yeah, and then you go king g7 and you want f6, and you have all the chances to hold. I'm not getting it.
He has to trade the h pawn for the b pawn. So the point is that bishop e1, bishop g3, you pick up the h pawn, you lose the b3 pawn, but that's very few pawns. And now king g7, f6 coming up, Peter.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to see Magnus's face right now, because he must be furious. I mean, this is too much.
He cannot be happy. And this is just a draw. This is just a draw.
I mean, what a miss. What a miss.
What a big miss.
Yeah,
And now just the
incredible.
king comes. King f7, king e7. You just bring the king to b8 and it's game over. Just keep your king on b6 or b8 and move the bishop around and it's a party.
Yeah.
He could just go king d8, king c8 and king b8 here. He's done it. He's done it.
Yeah, which means that Magnus has to win with the black pieces to equalize just to make my prediction come true, which I'm not believing anymore. Maxim might take the lead in the 5+1 section.
Red Ribbon saying that this is a world championship preview. It very well could be because Magnus and Jan Nepomniachtchi are leading the candidates currently. And I think the candidates will resume sometime in 21 spring is what we hear. We're halfway through with that. We'll have a challenger to the world champion sometime mid next year. And it very well could be Maxime. So it's always very exciting to see these players play against each other.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and this is, I think it's very good for chess, you know, whenever you see that it's not like this, that Magnus Carlsen comes and wins. It's clearly he's the favorite. He's somehow better than everyone else. But I mean, all these challengers are so incredibly strong that, I mean, basically Magnus really has to play extremely well in order to prove that he's the best. It does not come automatically. That's what I want to say. And people usually think that, of course, you know, it's automatic. No. So follow everything because chess has so many surprises for everyone.
And Dutch defender with an existential question that perhaps Maxime is better than some of you seem to think.
Well, I think those who didn't play against Maxime yet don't know what it feels like. That's just try to play against him and then you understand how strong he is. Yeah, but now, I mean, 2 moves before when White got knight AC, knight C4 in, I felt like, okay, I'm liking White's position. And just after Black was able to break with D6, D5, I feel like this is the type of position Magnus can be quite happy with.
So bishop f5, Black wants to bring the rook to d8 and start targeting the d3 pawn. The question is, how is White creating play? Knight e3, immediately asking Black to take a decision. He trades off. Rook d8 is an option. He goes for b6. c5 pawn was hanging. He could not have gone rook d8 at that moment and breaks with d4.
Yeah, and then he will pin this knight with rook d8. I mean, White is uncomfortable.
Or the bishop with rook d8. And either ways, Black looks like he's doing very well.
Yeah, the point was that after rook d8, there was a move knight b5, avoiding there was this tactical trick to get rid of the pin. But like this, imagine Black bishop getting to d5. I mean, I see chances of Magnus equalizing the 5+1 section. I mean, this is the best what you can have with the black pieces.
I like how Maxime is playing. He's creating his chances. He's gone for the break on the queen side. He needed to do that with that pawn on d4. And it shows that, you know, he's not just going to sit around and wait for you to do everything, but he's got some ideas of his own. And after ba5, there's a move like queen a4 on the board. The question is, how is Black going to react to a5? Queen
yes,
d6.
somehow I feel that Black has to cement his position. I mean, not to fall into any provocation. Yeah, very important that, okay, AB, I'm going to take back AB. Or maybe AB, queen B, but no, I think AB, just and get the bishop to d5, stabilize and start torturing your opponent. That's how I feel about it.
He's going to trade and trades the rook. Takes the chance that you can't go bishop d4 because of the pin with rook d1.
No, also you can take on d4 and take on e7. That's,
right.
Yeah, because after bishop d4, rook d1, suddenly I have e5.
Right.
All of a sudden, yeah, but you can just take and take on e7, and you will also hit f7.
Yeah, and bishop e6 would not mean anything. So queen b3 on the board. He can't take on d4 yet. He's gone for it. He's gone for it. So bishop d4, queen d. If rook d1, there's e5, and so he trades off on d4. If he picks up e7, black will go bishop e6 against queen f7.
Yeah, and then he's trying to use rook a1 and trying to also trap this rook on e7, but
not so easy, Peter. Not so easy for white after bishop e6.
Yeah, not so easy, but I still can't believe that this is so tough to deal with. But not
now black has some really big ideas with rook a1 and just trying to target your f1 bishop, even if the queens trade off. For example, a move like queen c3, black could potentially even look at just trading the queens and going rook a1, and now bishop c4 can only be defended by rook c7 and b5, and suddenly like you're completely lost because there's no way to fight against this.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be alert, and this powerful queen, because one thing is that you sometimes just want to give the exchange, but it doesn't bring anything. Yeah, queen b5, Maxim has to calculate very precisely, but what is the difference? Okay, difference is that, for example, if you go rook a1, I have queen a8 check, king g7, rook takes e6, fe6, queen e7 check, king a6, queen f8 check, and I lure the king further and further. Queen c6. Now queen takes e6 is a threat.
That's a double attack. So how is black fighting this? He's got to play bishop d5 is an option, or queen d5. Queen d5 could, yeah, queen d5 is an option, but then you just lose the b6 pawn. So is he going to go
also then you lose all this potential of winning the game, yeah?
Yeah, and also after the queen on d4 is perfectly placed. It defends the b6 pawn. It also defends against queen c3 check and everything along this diagonal. But now with rook e6 and queen a8 under threat, is bishop d5 the way to go?
Yeah, the big question is that how Magnus feels. He might feel that he missed queen c6. He might. I think that his move king g6 signal that he believes that his position is so powerful that he can make this useful move because he steps away from queen a8, and next he's gonna go rook a1. But after queen c6, it seems like he has to forget about this winning idea of pinning white's bishop, and he might have to settle for a draw.
Queen c6, a very strong move by Maxim. Just giving no time for black, because all black needed was to get the rook to a1. But now suddenly, Peter, I can't think of another move except bishop d5. What is the alternative for black here? Is it queen f6? Is that what he's... But then you just take rook e6. So you don't even have queen f6 on the board.
Yeah, you don't. And Magnus himself is very much confused because he's down to 1 minute on the clock.
But I'm very surprised about that, because the more I look at the position, the more I feel that bishop d5 is the only option. What am I missing?
Well, or queen d5. I mean, maybe queen d5, because queen takes b6, rook a1 would be just too dangerous for white. So I believe after queen d5, maybe white gives queen c3 check. That's actually very nice. And
finally, after a very long think, he plays bishop d5.
Yeah. And now it's Maxim's turn, because he has, I mean, what are white's options now? If you go queen c1, protecting from rook a1, then actually you go too passive. Black might come in with rook a2. And otherwise you have moves like queen c3 immediately, but then still the same issue comes with takes and rook a1 pinning. And you have the move queen d6. But it also does not stop white from going rook a1. So he goes queen d7.
And rook f7 is a threat, which is why he had to play rook a4, defending that queen on d4.
But this explains, because after bishop d5, queen d7, if not for rook a4, for this powerful move rook a4, there would have been no real defense against rook takes f7. . That's why Magnus spent his time.
interesting because although queen c5 was a move, but then maybe b4. Yeah, it was extremely complex, which is why Magnus thought over, but he found rook a4, a very nice defense. But it feels as if all of black's pieces are tied down somehow. You know,
but thanks to rook a4, actually all these issues are solved. I mean, black wants to go rook b4, hitting the b2 pawn. The queen on d4 still protects everything. Also, somewhere just to move the bishop on to e6 and trading the queen, and you might win a pawn with rook b4. I mean, yeah, we see.
Maxime says, take my pawn, take whatever you want. He's going for blood on the king side. h5 played, and these moves are always so disturbing. Magnus down to 32 seconds. He could not have taken on b2 because then rook f7 again became a threat. That queen d4 had lost its immunity. Queen f6, you can't take on d5 because the rook on e7 hangs. And now the big question is, how can white continue to play for the initiative? He's got threats like h3. He's gone rook e2. Okay, that's an interesting move, just defending the b2 pawn.
Yeah, he needed because this queen on f6 actually protects black's king side perfectly. Very important for white to keep this h5 pawn. Yeah, he wants to he insists on h6 threat. Magnus goes g5. Magnus wants to go h6 himself, and then he will kind of get this chilling mode that he needs for the final part. But rook d2 just in time to change. Can he change? Rook e4 is still possible because Maxim is down to 10 seconds on the clock. So Magnus would love to
pawn. And after rook e1, white could even go rook d6. He goes rook h4. He's eyeing the h5 pawn, but that feels a bit slow. Rook d6, hitting the b6 pawn. No way to defend. This trade, Peter, it feels like it's to white's favor.
Yeah, but okay, I mean, black is in no danger, yeah.
He's in time.
And in fact, okay, black is still pressing this. It's pawn up, of course, it's theoretical draw, objectively draw, but with 4 seconds on the clock, we have seen it in the previous match that objectivity doesn't mean anything here.
Maxime down to 4 seconds. Will Magnus flag Maxime in this position or be able to find his chances? Of course, it's a draw, but with this time control, just anything can happen. And Maxime picking up. This is the final game of the 5+1 segment, which means it's Magnus's last chance to equalize the score before moving on to the 3+1.
Yeah, this was now, of course, very nice for Maxime that he managed to cut off black's king. But he lets it back to g5. Okay, he relies on this rook b8 setup. Still, I would have preferred not to let this happen anymore. Magnus immediately grabbed the chance of putting his rook on b2 because there might be somewhere some idea with yeah, but okay, now it's different. Yeah, bishop f3.
And now there's no way to escape the trade of the bishops. Oh, and this is just over because rook e2 next, you trade off the rooks and you just keep the bishops on the board. And just king f2 because you're not in time to even go bishop f3 because white would pick up the f5 pawn. He will just simply still keeps going. And now king f3, king d3, king f4.
Yeah, this was the professional
played by Maxime in a tough situation. And with that, we have a wrap of the 5+1 blitz section, and it's Maxime Vachier-Lagrave who's taken the lead in this match. I have to say that's not what a lot of us expected, but Maxime's showing that he's not easy at all and proving a lot of us wrong in that. Peter, 3+1, this is going to be a real fight.
Absolutely. I mean, it's completely open. I mean, and the way how we got to this +1 for Maxime, yeah, that Magnus was up 2-0, and we usually used to that once Magnus grabs the lead, he never lets it go, and Maxime managed to bounce back, fight back. The match is completely wide open, and yeah, who knows what still is in store for us.
What's in store for us is 1 hour of 3+1 and a lot of epic chess. We will be back with all the action. Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hi, welcome back to the French course. In this chapter, we're going to look at the quick starter guide. I will try to show the whole repertoire in a very compact way to take you through the directions and the main lines and the side lines, show you and give you a little bit of an idea of what I recommend where and what type of positions we are going to be dealing with. But needless to say, I cannot cover everything in just one video. So for more details, definitely study the rest of the chapters. But without wasting any further time, let's attempt to cover everything in just one video. So it's e4, e6, that's the French. Here, there is a chapter on the second move alternatives. I look at two main ones. I find b3 a very interesting sideline that I've discovered when looking for a surprise weapon for white. Very interesting. Here I recommend d5, bishop b2, and now knight c6. It's a very, very strong idea. The main point is that we play against white setup, and white setup here is to bring the queen out to e2, knight to c3, and castle long. And knight c6 stops that effectively. If knight c3, the idea is d4, and if queen e2, the idea is that now we take on e4, and after knight c3, we have this very strong move, knight d4, forcing white to recapture on e4 with the queen, not with the knight, and then win an extra tempo with knight f6. And having won a couple of extra tempi, this position is very good for black. Now this is my solution for second move b3. Obviously there's more details, but that's basic. And after d3 move 2, there's the so-called King's Indian attack. White is intending to develop the bishop to g2 and start an offensive, some sort of a reversed King's Indian. Here I recommend a very interesting rare setup after d5, knight d2, knight f6, knight gf3, the move knight c6. This is not the usual way. Usually the c7 pawn goes towards c5 first and only then knight c6. But this is very interesting. The idea is to push the pawn to e5, and if white plays in the same style of the King's Indian attack with g3, which is already, by the way, quite inaccurate, I propose to take on e4, play bishop c5, and after bishop g2, e5, castle, castle. We get this interesting position, some sort of a reversed Pirc slash reversed Philidor, a very good position for black. We had lost a tempo on the e6, e5, but it's not too relevant. The bishop on g2 is not well placed. It's staring at the e4 pawn. Black has easy development. The idea is very often a5, b6, followed by bishop a6. And what's most important is that our king is very safe, which is not the case in many of the King's Indian attack positions, but here it is, and I believe this is an excellent way of handling the King's Indian attack. And with that, let's move on to the second move, d4. That's the main line, that's what most of the players play. Now after d5, I'll look at four main moves. Let's look at them one by one. Now against knight d2, I recommend the line with c5. That's the main line. I think it's the best line. And myself, I played the move knight f6, but it's not, as a kid actually, so it's not very good. I had to find it out the hard way. After c5, there are a few options. Ed, queen d5, dc5 is one of them. It essentially leads to a similar pawn structure. After knight f6, knight f3, queen takes c5. Knight gf3 is the main move. After c takes d4, white has two variations. E takes d5 is the old main line. Now we take queen d5, bishop c4, queen d6. Main line goes short castle, knight f6, knight b3, knight c6, knight takes d4, knight takes d4, and there's an endgame, which is very fine for black, but knight takes d4 is the main move. And here I recommend a relatively rare setup with bishop e7 and short castle. And the main line goes c3, castle, queen f3, queen c7, hitting the c4 bishop. And one of the important ideas that I show in this chapter is that after bishop b3,
Okay, I'm ready. I am supposed to checkmate black. Okay, I know that queen could go here, but then, the knight. The black knight can stop me if I go here. Okay, so I'm gonna go here. Yay! I got it. All right, this is easy. Next one. White to play and win. Okay. Well, I can go here. Oh. Something with the knight. I know it's something with the knight, but I can't take this. Oh, why didn't I do that? Magnus Carlsen, Sergei Karyakin, New York, 2016. I was in New York when he played this game. I should know what he did. Okay, I'm just gonna go for queen here. Needs to be something with the queen. Queen goes here, then king can take the queen. What other pieces do I have? I also, I'm gonna try the queen here. And I did it! Yay! I'm just as good as the world champion Magnus Carlsen. That's the feeling I have anyway. I'm gonna study on Chessable every day.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com.
The broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation.
And we are back. And as Peter was saying that before the start of the match, we were discussing what is it that Maxime needs to do to fight back. But now the big question is, what is it that Magnus needs to do to fight back? And Peter, according to me, this is something that we've spoken about during the Champions Chess Tour as well, that we've seen Magnus bring out his best when he's against the wall.
Yeah, and we have seen the last two games he took control. I mean, in the penultimate game, he had this technically winning position. I mean, it was like a big shock. And I think Magnus is very, very angry with himself that how he did not win that game. Then he was also better pressing in the very last game. So the direction is good. He has to keep up. I mean, he has to keep up this pressure on Maxime. The only thing is that when you are missing your chances, then this dynamic might turn again. And okay, Maxime definitely after the break, I believe he also comes out. I believe both players will come back. Like, you know, we have to combat the very first games will be very, very principled, because if Magnus comes back, then he might start overrolling Maxime, but if Maxime keeps the lead, then it might be still quite a frustrating comeback for Magnus.
And I did ask our chat, Peter, what their prediction for the 3+1 segment is, and they're quite torn actually. Lots of support for Maxime, especially after seeing that performance in 5+1. We're seeing a very in-shape MVL, while Magnus falling a little short on the clock. Yes, it's really anyone's match. You can never write off the world champion, but he's facing a very beast version of Maxime today.
Yeah, and Maxime is also this type of player that with each victory, he gets more and more confidence, and he takes it very natural that, you know, if I win, it's a natural result. One could argue that, of course, this is probably the characteristic of all the strongest players in the world, but, you know, I'm not 100% sure that it's the case with everyone, but it does seem like, you know, with each game, he's getting stronger and stronger. But Magnus, on the other hand, we have seen whenever he's under pressure, he starts delivering, and the last two games, he already signaled to his opponent, you might be leading, but I'm taking over the control of the match, and it's just a matter of time till I will be up on the score again.
That's a very insightful point, because Magnus was the one who was on the front foot in that last game, wasn't able to convert that end game, but he showed that he's up for it. Really, it's I do believe that 3+1 is the most critical section here, because in the bullet, we've seen just how strong Magnus can be, but when it becomes blitz and when there's a bit more time on the clock, Maxime is really holding his own. So we've got 60 minutes of 3+1 coming up, after which there will be another 30 minutes of fast and furious bullet. Peter, we've been seeing interesting opening choices by both players. We saw Magnus's idea of Queen A4 countering Maxim's Grunfeld. Do you think we're going to see a repeat of that?
Yeah, it was kind of strange that the strategy worked very well for Magnus at the very start, and then he was the one who deviated. And this was quite unexpected. And look at this now, Magnus, the section just started, and he goes for third move H4.
So no Queen A4 ideas this time, which we've seen earlier after Knight C3, D5, takes on D5, Knight D5, Queen A4. We've been seeing that line. Instead, Magnus plays his favorite move H4 very early on, and D6, Knight C3.
Yeah, I mean, this H4 line, strangely enough, became very, very popular. Maxim himself used it against Jan Nepomniachtchi, I believe, in one of their critical games in last year's FIDE Grand Prix, and got a very good position. Grischuk himself was the one who invented it, reinvented it on the highest level, because this move H4 was there. I think Simon Williams was the one who kept on playing it. But I mean, the really new twist was that understanding that if black goes for the banker gambit with c5, b5, then that was like a common knowledge that if white plays h4 in move 3, then black can just switch to banker gambit. But after it turned out that banker gambit isn't that easy, isn't that simple, then third move h4 became like a main weapon fighting against the Grunfeld all of a sudden.
And if you just saw this position, you would never believe it came from a Grunfeld. And it's kind of like the King's Indian setup, but black has gone bishop to e7 and not to g7. White immediately breaking in with h5. He wants to either play h6 at some point or even hg6, because black will be forced to take with the f pawn. Avoiding all of that, Maxime with a very interesting move. Bishop e7 is knight e7. If you pick up the knight on d5, the bishop hangs.
Yeah. That's the point, but I mean, positionally this move is quite ugly, so I'm not really, paying attention to this pawn. Yeah, just play bishop e3, because usually black wants to play f7, f5 in all these structures. Once you put your pawn on g5, you kind of fix this structure. And the reason why I love Magnus's choice that it disbalances again Maxim. Yeah, he has incredible reflexes in the Grunfeld, but not being a King's Indian player in all these positions, what is this? Bishop takes e5 followed by knight e5 just wins the game. Okay, wins, it's a little bit too much. I mean, it wins the pawn and gives a clear advantage for white.
I don't think it's too much at all, Peter. Is this just a blunder? What's going on? So
yeah, but now black got some really nice dark squares, so it's not that easy.
It's not that easy. And he's also discoordinated white's pieces. It's going to be a while before that rook on a1 finds himself in the game. And he goes short castle.
Yeah, basically, maybe if you ask Maxim, he will say that now I'm happy for the first time in this game.
That's not so bad considering that we're still very early on in the game. So he goes a4, making sure that black is not able to create easy play with a b5 break or go a4, a3 himself, further weakening the dark squares. And is Maxime trying to go f5 next?
Yeah, exactly. This type of positions why he loves to play chess, where he's so strong with counterplay. f5 gonna come. And it still requires some time for white to go king b1, king a2. That's 2 extra moves. Still.
And that's how white is planning to develop. Go king b1, king a2, and finally bring the rook into the game. Simply goes b6 and doesn't start with f5. That does give white his time.
Yeah, but he wants to go knight d6 first, hitting the c4 pawn. And he says that, yeah, I did lose time with b6, but you first defend, please, the c4 pawn, and then I'm going to go f5.
f5 on the board now, Peter, and wow, this, I have to say, looks like Maxime has really seized the initiative. If you take on e4, white can't recapture with the pawn because that would allow rook f2, so white would have taken knight e4, and you don't want to open that diagonal, so he keeps the pressure on, brings the bishop back to e5.
Yeah, black has perfect compensation. The big question is it enough just for equality or is it enough for something more? Because
has to take with the knight.
Yeah, he has to take with the knight. Of course, white's point is to keep this e4 square. And Maxim sidesteps with knight f5. He wants to keep the tension. He is also eyeing maybe at knight h4. Now Magnus immediately stops it with queen c1 because knight h4 maybe can be answered by rook takes h4 and then queen takes h6. I mean, all kinds of ideas like this.
So white has an extra pawn, but I really like black's pieces. They're all centralized. Every piece is placed ideally on the board. He's got the two bishops. And I see the evaluation bar, Peter. It does give an advantage to white, but I think we cannot believe it right now.
Yeah, I mean, I would not pay much attention to it. It's a bullet game. I mean, the players are again down to their less than 1 minute. The knight is exchanged on d4. Yeah, black has this powerful bishop on d4. Okay, white is very solid. Yeah, white goes g4. He wants to stabilize everything. On the other hand, now with this f3 pawn weakness, he really needs some knight g3, bishop e4, knight f5 regrouping, but Maxim will never give time for that.
And he wants to go rook f4, rook f8, hitting that f3 pawn immediately, which is supported, which now gets supported by that rook on e3. A very nice way to defend it. He goes queen f8, bishop g4 is a big threat on the board.
But now knight g3, I mean, time for knight g3.
Knight g3, a nice move because it also defends the rook on f1, so bishop g4 not possible anymore. He comes back, he wants to go rook f8, but there's always knight f5 to sidestep everything.
Bishop e4, I mean, yeah, there are so many tactics. Yeah, bishop takes g4, exactly.
The point is that rook f1, the bishop on e4 would hang, and look at the players, they're down to 20 seconds.
Yeah, bishop g6, maybe this was the move Magnus was relying, but no, it's
not good enough, Peter.
For survival. Magnus has to fight for survival, and he's down to 20 seconds.
And this rook on b3 is going to be stuck there for a long time while black is just going to... Magnus immediately finding a way to open up because he wants to take that pawn on b6 and king e7 to defend.
Hang on, rook takes f5. What is this? Rook f5, gf, g4. It was very dangerous. Oh.
Yeah, that looked extremely strong because how is white defending it? We'll have to take a check on that. Maybe chat can tell us if that sacrifice actually worked. Did Magnus have a chance to go rook f5, gf5, g4? Chat will inform us.
Yeah, nah, I would not be surprised if it ends in a draw because just too little time.
And he's not going bishop f5 anymore because that would end in rook f5. And that's it. We've got a draw by repetition. With that, Maxim maintaining his 1 point lead, and immediately we go.
Yeah, this is what I mean. It's a brutal format. I mean, for us spectators, it's fantastic. I mean, for the players, it's very, very demanding because you never really have time to adjust to the new situation. And believe me, after every game, like also the previous one, yeah, it was such an ups and down battle that without calming down and without making sense of it, to start a new game, okay, you have to get used to it. Probably the players are used to it. For someone who plays this format for the very first time, I think this would be one of the biggest challenges, just how to start a new game right after you had so much emotions in the previous one.
But also, Peter, these players are so used to playing these formats. They've played the Speed Chess Championship before. Magnus won it in 2017. Hikaru won it in 2018 and 2019 after an epic final against Wesley So. And I think these are the best players in the world that are fighting for this. So they're definitely up for the challenge. For us mere mortals, it does look very difficult, but they know what they have to do.
Yeah, they know. I mean, I'm pretty sure that, but we also see with all these online events as well, that the level of the games get stronger and stronger, better and better. The players are adjusting their play. They've settled in kind of, they understand more what they have to do, how they have to treat the situation. But look at this game, you force your opponent to think right from the beginning. You tease him with some bishop c4 tempo. I mean, there are all reasons to think.
Also, Peter, I'm being informed by chat that you were bang on about your idea of rook f5 and going g4. That was a big miss by black right there.
Yeah, I mean, it felt right away. And I believe that, you know, when Magnus let the bishop on taken on f5, I mean, his heart got a hit, definitely. But then he managed to correct immediately. But that was a very scary moment for him.
And he never went back to f5. Then he went king b1, king a2. So he definitely spotted that idea.
Yeah, I mean, this is the typical stuff that when you just let the bishop on f5 taken in the very last, I mean, exactly at the second when you let your mouse go, you already know that what you have done. Yeah, that's typical. And look at this. What is happening? I mean, queen takes c6 can come with check, but then there is bishop d7.
Bishop f6.
Crazy. I mean,
What's going on in that line, Peter? After queen c6, you've got to go bishop d7. And I see on our board that queen e5 is played. He's still having a think here. And you take on f6 because the g5 bishop hangs.
Yeah. Do I have some bishop f2 check or not?
Oh, wow.
I don't know. It's not the end. You just move the king f1.
Because the e4 pawn hangs, right? If you take on f6, you just go queen e.
Yeah. You know what? Let them figure it out. I mean, it's their job. We are here. We spotted it. There is all this excitement, all these possibilities. And we see Maxim feels now that I have to calculate because maybe it's working. But if you spend 1 minute and you realize I'm not happy with it, then you regret it. And he goes for it. Okay. We see this line. Yeah, the two bishops compensate. But I mean, what is this? It's pure madness. I mean, and yeah, maybe it's just fine. Maybe black is just fine because this bishop on e5 will be so powerful.
In fact, he moves away with the king because the dream is, of course, if white takes on e5, you want to take fe5 to solve your structural problems.
Yeah, this is also one additional stuff. Yeah, Maxim goes bishop d3, tries to keep, I mean, it's a psychological battle now. Yeah, none of them wants to blink. They want to keep this going. And if you can find one more useful move, you're going to do it, but don't overdo it. King g7 might run into queen h4. And there is no way of that might be just game over. I mean, king g7 runs into queen h4 and suddenly black does not have queen f5 check. I moved and if you move the queen, I will, because you have to protect the bishop. Yeah, Magnus goes bishop e6. It's a stabilizing move.
And look at those two queens just facing each other, neither deciding that they want to trade. And now finally, Maxim steps away with queen h4, queen g5, insisting that you want to improve that pawn structure. He does it. Maxim has an extra pawn, but I think black has full compensation here. King g7, bring the other rook into the game.
Yeah, now it's stabilized the queen side. Knight e4, knight takes g5, bishop a2.
And all Maxim really needs to do is just keep up his lead. So I think, but now Peter, this a pawn could potentially be quite dangerous.
Yeah, on the other hand, I mean, he has so much initiative, yeah, and you see this rook e4, rook g4 immediately creating the threats against black's king. So maybe finally black will give up this dark square bishop and get the bishop back to e6. But if you give up the dark square bishop, then white gets free rolls. So maybe h5 has to be king h6. Wow. What is king h6?
That's very fearless. I don't know if it's good fearless or bad, but
yeah,
that's a tough move to make or understand. Finally, he trades, but now rook g5 and that king on f6, there was a rook f6 mate on the spot, which is why rook b6 had to be played to stop that. But Peter, rook f5, he's gone rook f4.
Yeah, I also saw that rook f5, rook h5 and all this. But now rook takes d5, rook f7 wins on the spot, no?
Was that just checkmate?
No, you still have king h5. You still had king h5.
King h5.
Yeah, so g4 was correct.
And this king on h6, I have to say king h6 was a very strange move and the start of many problems for black. Does he go rook h5 and what happens after rook h5 and just pick up the rook on g6? And
well, he could have picked it up immediately, but let's not forget Magnus is down to 7 seconds, so just hanging on.
I mean, I thought Maxim should
G5 check, finish, game over.
That's it.
Oops.
Peter, that means that this is just absolutely amazing. And the game starts immediately. And we see Magnus employing the same move, h4, that he did in the 3+1 segment earlier in Grunfeld. He's deserted his queen a4 idea for now. And a similar start, Peter, but he goes knight c6 here.
Yeah, and okay, I mean, I like the strategy for Magnus that he has to keep insisting with the line which works until it works. I mean, just to put the pressure on the opponent. And look at this Maxim sacrifice. This has to be preparation. I mean, you can't give up this center pawn just like that. It's impossible.
And that also in 6 seconds. I absolutely agree with you on that.
And what is happening? I mean, okay, clearly bishop is developed. Black wants to, but
what
I mean,
Black want? Do you want to play h6 here?
Yeah, h6 is gonna be met by bishop f4, I believe.
And then knight h5. Then you take on d6.
Then yeah, no, I don't want to give up the dark square bishop even if I win one more pawn. No, yeah. So and bishop is correct.
Now. Or knight g4. Knight g4 is an option here.
Yeah, but knight g4, then bishop f4. Yeah, it already perfectly makes sense.
Right. So he's gone rook e8, hitting the e4 pawn, f3, just stabilizing the center.
Yeah, I mean, the move d5 would be the natural reaction. Yeah, d5 is played, so cd will be, rook d1 first.
I really have to say, Peter, it's amazing how Maxime is going for such dynamic play. He's 2 points up, but he knows he doesn't want to play safe. He's taking his chances. He's gone for this pawn sacrifice. Maxime is out for blood. I like this move, queen c7, eyeing the dark square weaknesses, also just moving away from the d file and forcing white to take a decision in the center. And
now this bishop b5, I mean, this is the move I was pinning my hopes from the white side, because this tempo on the e8 look, and then I'm getting closer to short castle. I need to get my king away from the center as quickly as possible.
And bishop d7 unfortunately doesn't work, because you can just simply take on d7 and the d5 pawn is pinned again.
Yeah, and it's not in the spirit. I mean, if already Maxim started gambling, then he needs to gamble, and yeah, he goes bishop b7. This is the move in the spirit. I don't know the objective evaluation of this move, but in a practical game, good or bad, you have to do it.
The engine bar hates it, but of course, this is just, it's an exchange sacrifice for the initiative. The e4 pawn is still hanging. You can't take on e4 because of the pin along the e file. But Peter, it doesn't feel enough to me.
Yeah, but these positions are very tricky. I mean, it all comes down to the next 1-2 moves, because if white is very precise and then he managed to somehow prove that move per move, I have things under control with maybe something like queen d6, rook d6, ef3, bishop d4, f take g2, that would be an intermezzo. Yeah, Magnus goes knight b5. He wants to get knight d6 tempo in. No time, because black has long-term very nice compensation, but black's pieces are still not yet stable, because this e4 pawn, once you take fe4 or black plays e takes f3, all black's pieces are freed up.
And Magnus playing fast. He's up on the clock now. Queen b4, another very nice move. Hitting
now
that
knight takes e4, and now is he winning?
It looks completely winning now. That knight e4 move, hitting that rook on d8, giving black no time to pick up the rook on f1. Taking advantage of the pin again. So what happens after bishop f1? Queen d8 is hanging, so you can't take the rook.
Yeah, now it's already clear that white is in time to stabilize. Yeah.
So what is white's move here, Peter? Because the rook on f1 is hanging. The knight e3 is also a threat right now. How is white stabilizing? He needs one stabilizing move. What is that? Is it? Can he just simply go rook e1?
Well, rook c1 would be natural, but then you go queen e6. It's not the end of the world yet.
What about rook fe1? Is that an option?
Rook fe1, it's an option, but somehow you need to calculate, because knight takes e3, rook d7, queen d7, you take on a6. And
that's the point, but it's still very scary with that knight on e3. Although luckily black will not have queen d2. Maybe you can just show that line.
Yeah,
quickly.
I mean, the line is rook fe1. If black takes on e3, then
he's gone for it. He's played rook e1, And here, luckily, black has got no queen d2 coming in because of the knight on e4. You have bishop d4 or queen d4, but then bishop d4 could be an option there. We might see this, Peter. We might see this happen right now. Queen a6 on the board. Maxime chooses queen to d4. White has to move away with the king or play knight f2.
No, actually, he also has queen c8, queen c3, but then queen b6. Wow, that's a lovely trap. I mean, what I was talking about, that it seems like I'm forcing the exchange of queens, but you can go queen b6, and queen takes c3 is met by bishop d4 check.
What is coming in next? It's going to pick up the knight. Queen f2 is a threat, so is he going to fall back with queen e2 or rook e2?
Yeah, but then queen comes from h2. I mean, you have to, and look at this, Magnus down to 16 seconds on the clock.
And Maxime has got almost a minute.
Yeah. I mean, this is Maxime's strategy. Yeah, but queen d2 and then run with the king.
But queen h1, queen g2, you just go king d1 and that...
No, king d3. You go king d3, hitting the bishop.
f3, and then you take on d3.
Then
d4.
I take, yeah, with king d3, I force the exchange of queens. And
that's a nice idea.
That would be very important.
Although there is bishop f2 in that position.
Yeah, but okay, then rook e8 check, and I'm hitting you with check.
Right, I mean, so we're looking at the line.
Then g6 check.
We might see this, Peter. We might see queen g2. This is happening. Bishop f2 played. Rook Peter, we are just calling out the action.
Yeah, well, I mean, and queen f4. Yeah, this one
queen
is.
Queen f1 has to be played.
King d2.
This is super exciting.
Yeah, and all this with 10 seconds on the clock. Yeah,
with 10 seconds on the clock, and that's it.
That's
Magnus Carlsen wins because queen f7 was a massive threat. No checks on the board. Queen c4 is not an option. Everything under control. Hg6 coming in, and with that, the world champion strikes back.
I mean, very, very impressive play by Magnus here, because it was so easy to go wrong. I mean, all this tactical possibility, everything with very few seconds on the clock. I think Magnus can regain his confidence after this game. Maybe he didn't lose his confidence at all, but I mean, and you see he's back to this line which served him good in the second game. And he goes bishop e6 now. Immediately, so no more b5, b4. That move actually worked quite nicely in that game, but definitely the players understood already what White should be doing there. So Magnus deviates, and knight g3. Okay, it's a typical, slightly slow, anti-martialish position, but in general, I feel that black is kind of quite solid here. Rook e8, making sure that he always has this bishop f8 move, so he doesn't have to worry about knight f5. And the big question for White, do you go b4 or not? It's the typical debate.
But I think after b4, black would go knight a4 currently.
You think? I thought that I would take on a2 and go back with the knight to e6, but
that's also a really good idea, and we see that on the board without even being provoked to do it.
Yeah, because this knight on e6 is usually such a monster piece. I mean, this is what you like as a Spanish player to get, and Maxime might regret of spending that 20-30 seconds on this exchange of bishops.
And I think what we've noticed so far in all these segments is that 1 second increment is just about enough to make a move, and not as much to really gain time unless you're completely winning. But, you know, even when you're slightly better, it means nothing. Even if you're a lot better, it can often mean nothing. So really, the clock is extremely important, as important as the position on the board in this format. And rook a1 will be played to fight for the a file.
Yeah,
White keeps control. Can black go queen c6, rook a8, trying to insist that he wants to trade off the rooks?
Yeah, actually, I expected queen c6 a move earlier, because yeah, just not to take on a2, but it's the same idea.
I think it works because of the c2 pawn. Otherwise, White would have time.
Exactly. That's what I missed as well. I thought that if you take and go queen c6, I have queen a5, but then you can take the c2 pawn. Now Maxim had to waste time. Magnus gets the a5 with rook a8, and now c4. Yeah, this is the typical way that, okay, you basically didn't got anything out of the opening, but you make sure that your opponent cannot break later with d5, and you try to claim that if I ever get my knight to d5 with something like knight e2, knight c3, knight d5, I might have some chance. But Magnus immediately goes for the c5 square, targeting the d3 pawn, which is white's weakness.
And I really like that, because that question is, how does white, because if you go queen a3, black also has queen a4, just offering a queen trade.
Exactly. And now also black has all kinds of ideas with bishop g5. I mean, basically it's clear that black is perfectly fine, even has a slight advantage because he has the c6 pawn which covers the d5 square, and there is no way to kick the knight from c5 away. And we're gonna see g6, king g7 played by Magnus in the next couple of moves, and then play also h5. I mean, the typical way you can make all these moves improving your position. And for white, it's much harder. He does the same. I mean, he needs to play g3, and now Magnus goes bishop g5 because f4 was maybe a threat.
I like black's position. Yeah, I think black has no problems at all. Queen b3 can potentially come in. Just looks like everything's under control for black here, and white has got no real targets in black's position. He goes h4. Would you play bishop? He's gone for bishop d8. I was wondering if bishop c1 was an option, but he chose bishop d8. I think black wants to play queen b3 at some point, but he has to be careful of queen a8 always.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm not sure about the queen trade, because then I feel that if we trade queens, then white will bring his king to e2, defend his d3 weakness, and somehow with the knight just hang on. But with queens on the board, there is more dynamic in the position. You have, look at this, queen b1 check, he wins the pawn.
Picks up the pawn. Picks up the pawn, and if the queens are traded, that is just lost. So white has to keep the queens on the board, threatening queen d8. Just h6 now means queen a8, queen c6. So white's got the threat of picking up the c6 pawn, but then he loses the e4 pawn. This looks like things have suddenly gone very wrong for white.
Yeah, but the point is that usually you want to play g6 in this position, but yeah, h6 is stronger because you have to take away the g5 square from white's knight.
And now, do you want to go queen a8, king h7, queen c6? I don't see a better option.
Yeah, but then you take knight takes e4. And you are coming...
Anyway, knight e4 played, queen c2 is the threat. White has gone queen... So he's threatening to go a perpetual with queen f5 and queen c8. G6 needs to be played.
Now knight f6 is going to be played, and okay, it's...
Knight f6 is a very nice move, keeping it under control. Actually, g6, the more I look at it, I don't like it because it creates more weaknesses in your camp. And he's gone for knight f6, keeping it solid. But does white have c5? I was just going to say this because...
Exactly.
Now you don't want to...
Do I have e4? Do I have e4? How does it go? e4, queen f5 check, g6, queen takes f6, e takes f6. You just go king h2 and my f7 pawn is hanging, yeah. So I cannot go for that.
Peter, can you quickly show that line?
Well, if I go e4, queen f5 check, g6, queen takes f6, e takes f3, king h2, and there this f7 pawn was hanging. And like this, at least, I mean, now Maxim has chances.
But now just take on e5 and queen e4, queen f5 definitely missed by Maxim because you're looking at queen e5. What an incredible move. And that's it. That's it. Queen h1 is
queen c6
queen
now.
c6. Queen c6 is there to control queen h1.
Incredible. Queen f3 back. Maybe Maxim escapes.
Yeah, this looks like now he's escaped because I do not see a way to continue the attack and the mating threats. You've got queen f5, but that doesn't come to anything.
Queen
because
g6 mouse slip. He wanted to go queen f5 check.
Oh my.
Oh
my God.
Yeah, because okay,
This is the moment that we want to see Magnus's face right now. He would be so angry. That is a rest in peace mouse situation. Wanted to go queen f5, but Peter, you remember in the Skilling Open when he made that mistake against Jan Nepomniachtchi, he went queen b4, with a mouse slip, blundered that queen. He was aiming for queen b5, but immediately bounced back. So I think he's the kind of player who has a lot of tolerance of not going on tilt. But Magnus needs to win this game. Maxime still maintaining that 2-point lead.
Yeah, and we see the same line repeat. Interesting that after knight e2 will Maxime again sacrifice the, he goes for c5. So it means that he believes in this position. This has to be done his preparation. The big question is, where will he improve his...
Now, bishop e3, it's exactly what we saw.
Knight g4, that's the first.
And we were thinking about bishop f4 there, but he's chosen bishop d4, and now knight e5 played.
Yeah, and the idea is that after f4 he wants to go c5 probably. I mean, because otherwise f4 would be just very strong, but f4 can be met by c5.
And fe5, you take on d4 and you pick up the e5 pawn with the bishop after queen d4.
Yeah, because at all costs black has to keep his bishop alive, and if white moves the bishop back, then already I can bring the knight to c6 and I'm coming to d4 and compensate. So Magnus says, no thank you, I'm gonna go long castle first.
So c5 is met by bishop c5 perhaps, so you don't have time to bring your knight into the game. Or also even just bishop e3, because the d6 pawn is extremely weak. Do you think after c5, white can take on c5? So he goes bishop e6 actually to, the idea is that you want to go c5.
Yeah, now probably the question is, can white play the move c5? But it's scary. I mean, maybe some queen a5. I mean, all kinds of dynamics are coming. And okay, it's a very tough situation, because just like 1 minute ago, it looked like Magnus gonna win his last game and then he equalizes the score, and we will have the new dynamics like Magnus has just bounced back and equalized the score, and all of a sudden it's still -2 now for Magnus. This is very, very nice. This is very nice, because now he could sidestep with queen f2 with the tempo. He hits the queen and he wants to go f4, f5, closing down the bishop. So black has to go queen f6. f5 played anyway, knight d5.
He's going to trade and take. If you don't take with now, he's going to take on e4. But Maxime having a think.
Yeah, I mean, he's up on the clock 20 seconds. It's correct that he thinks, because actually his decision might be vital.
I mean, why not just take on e4? What is how does white respond to fe4 here?
Yeah, I don't know. Somehow I'm guessing trade on f6 and then push d6 and bishop out. This is
and that's what's happening. And bishop will come to c4 and try and create some counterplay along the f file with rook f1 next.
Yeah, and to claim that, okay, finally, if I'm able to grab the e4 pawn, then okay, I'm dominating. The big question is how Maxime goes rook b8, king g7. Because h4 is still hanging. Yeah, that's kind of unpleasant. Magnus takes the time.
And the point is, you want to go rook f1 and double up. And now he can also go rook e1 and start hitting the e3 pawn.
But then I go e4. That's typical Maxime. Hits the b2 pawn and then gets bishop d4. That's what he wants with e3.
That is actually a really nice move, Peter, to go e3 with the idea to give up these pawns. You don't care about it. What you care about is the activity of the f.
Like he's creating his play, his agenda, and all of a sudden Maxime is just in time to change the dynamic and get impose his will on the position. Yeah, Magnus goes rook e1, e4. He has to take. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't want, but he has to. He had no right to allow bishop d4 protecting the e3 pawn.
Bishop b2, king c2. The bishop can always come back to d4, which is a really nice square, but he can first even play f5 to just cement that pawn on e4.
Yeah, that's a lovely move. Yeah, f5 and then bishop d4 back. Okay, white will always have rook b3, but it's not like a winning attempt. It's more like holding. Yeah.
I wonder if Maxime is considering bishop d4 directly here, but he's gone for f5. I think this move makes a lot of sense. Why give the e4 pawn and bishop d4 next? I really like Maxime's position here.
Yeah, but I mean also rook d5 was an incredible move played at tempo by Magnus, because he knew that he has to activate his rook to d5, because if the rook gets cut off, then his pawn on d6 is gonna fall. And whether it's good or bad, I'm not sure that you can judge it within few seconds, but you have to go for it.
You have to go for it.
d7.
So now black has to trade because rook b8 and d8 was a threat, and now he has to go king e7 next. He's gone bishop e5. He keeps his chances, but this is looking white shouldn't be in any danger now at all with those two c6 d7 pawns.
Yeah, absolutely. And the bishop on c4 does incredible job of protecting these two pawns. Okay, one can argue that black's bishop on g3 as well, but I mean,
Peter, Maxime has bungled up somewhere big time in this endgame.
yeah, well, this rook d5 was very strong for I think he might have missed this b4 idea that he is in time to just break. And look at this, Magnus is about to bounce back or not that clear yet. I mean, let's not forget this king and this bishop. Yeah, with king d6, it's an incredibly solid setup. Maybe black is just fine. Look at this. Very untypical stuff, but very effective.
And I think the point is that after bishop d5, black also had rook f5, so he gave up the c6 pawn. But now, once again, things looking fine for black.
Yeah, looking fine. The only question, because how do you treat this position? It's not very tricky. Bishop d8, he wants to...
He has to start pushing the e pawn at some point. He offers a trade. A rook trade is an immediate draw. So is Magnus going to keep it alive, or will he rely on the next game?
Yeah,
he's gone for it. That's it. That's it.
Controls all this diagonal, can he?
So bishop d4, stopping your king from coming in.
No, it shouldn't be.
And now e3, king c4 is met by e2.
But not king c2, exactly. That's what I meant, because these pawns are too far away. I mean...
But Peter, you cannot anyway enter. Isn't this just a draw? Because you have no way to enter with your king, right?
Yeah, but I mean, no, I'm settling now king d6. Now I'm coming. I mean, I was settling king c7 and that's it. It's 1-0. Magnus wins.
Wow. That's it, because there's no way to fight against king e6, king f7. And that is a classical Magnus grind and creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it was incredible. I mean, and also when Maxime played rook f6, it immediately hit me that, you know, it looks like you think that it's a draw offer because it's exchange of the rooks, but in fact this is very tricky with two passers like this. And we see this Caro-Kann. I think this line is supposed to be fine for black. I think this line is supposed to be fine for black.
The question is, does black just sidestep the move bishop f6, or does he not care about it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, e5 is played, c3.
So he decides not to care about it, but it could not have been taken in that's a b4.
But okay, this e5, bishop a6 is slightly mysterious. I mean, if it's good, but I mean, it can also turn out to be unfortunate.
So after b4, white wants to go bishop c4. He goes knight d5 instead. f6 is a potential threat.
Yeah, f6 is a threat, but this position is not completely out of control. I mean, strategically speaking, maybe even some bishop h4, bishop g3. Okay, Maxime was first.
And this was the point, Peter, that after f6, there's queen h5. So which is why I think it's just a potential threat, but not a real one.
Yeah. Yeah, but still, I mean, it feels to me like black's position is slightly artificial, and if white gets two moves in like rook fe1 and he sidesteps with the queen, he will simply be better. Magnus goes c5, but doing that with the king on e8, I mean, it requires lot of courage.
Bishop d3, hitting the pawn on b5. I think a move like c4, you want to provoke that because then you really stabilize your center. But if not c4, wow, black just answers with shot castle.
Yeah, yeah. And now finally he gets this harmony, and I'm not sure that this losing time for bishop c2, bishop d3 was justified. Now it all makes perfect sense. Look at this. Magnus got a very healthy position. Maxim wants to provoke some weakness. On the other hand, okay, Magnus goes for f5 immediately, judging that he will get immediate counterplay with b4. Is that what he wants? But is it so easy to get? Because it's clear what he wants to get, but b4, maybe I have knight c4. Maybe you cannot go b4.
But then is there knight f4?
I mean, no, but my bishop is still on d2. I'm controlling the f4 square, and now the pawn on e6 is weak.
Right, knight f4, you just trade on f4 and pick up the pawn on e6. So that's why b4 was not possible. He decided to trade off the knight and goes rook f6 to defend it. Also, white has to be careful on potential threats along rook g6, the g2 square, because that queen on b7 could be something, and ideas of b4 are in the air.
Yeah, this is, I mean, it's fantastic. If black gets in b5, b4 also and changes the light square bishop, then he might remain with a very powerful knight on d5. On the other hand, those structures are not so clear because seemingly you have a good knight versus bad bishop, but white gets a lot of activity, things are far from clear. Maxim goes for a3. He wants to make sure that he opens up the a file after b4.
I think b4 still, Peter. It just looks very tempting to go b4 now. Because like you pointed out, that if we trade off the light squared bishop, there's a good knight versus bad bishop position, and that's quite the dream. But yeah, Maxim, he's gone for it. He's gone for the idea of b4. Has to trade.
But he has bishop takes b4 trick or not? I mean, can he just liquidate? Yeah, he does.
Knight b4 was met by queen b8, queen b4, but then that means that that's an extra pawn right now.
Yeah, it's an extra pawn, which is enough to compensate for the powerful knight. But now the big question, where do you put this bishop? You go bishop c5, but then the bishop, yeah, this is the way, because the bishop on c5 would be out of the game, but bishop on e5, that's where you want to have this bishop.
The bishop on e5 is very much in the game, eyeing that g7 pawn. That's actually a really nice way of solving the problem of where to put the bishop.
Yeah, but exactly, you go rook f7 and then you come, now the b2 pawn will fall.
Then queen f8 and you maintain the threat on g7. So it's going to be very interesting. He, of course, offers a queen trade.
Yeah.
Queen b7, rook b1 runs into knight c3. So you don't want to play that. Instead, he goes queen d6. He wants to keep the pieces on the board. Hitting the e6 pawn. I think a queen trade is definitely black's dream, but Maxim, is he going to be able to avoid it?
Relies on some rook c6 idea. He doesn't want to defend his b2 pawn. h4, exactly. Okay, black king on h7 might feel also insecure. Now rook c6 tempo, rook e7.
So black wants to go king f7 and go rook b7 next to activate this rook.
Yeah, king h2.
And he chooses king h5. Does he want to go g5? He wants to go g5.
Yeah, he wants to go g5, yeah. He wants to trade off as many pawns as possible. And if fg, yeah, white should take fg. Now black can get his king to f5 or knight to f5 eventually also. But g4 pawn is a weakness.
Can't take it because of rook b3 check, but he can repeat with rook f8, rook g8. Wait, no, what? He's got king h4. He's got king h4, so it's still under control.
Yeah, I mean, after king h5, but then he had rook b8, so there was this rook b8 possibility for white.
And now rook g2 is a threat, so he moves away with rook to g7.
And he prefers knight e3, yeah? He prefers some knight e3 ideas. Yeah.
Wants to bring that knight to f5. Incredible play by both these players, down to seconds. Again, Maxim slightly ahead on the clock.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, when you look at it, then things look quite normal and everything. But I mean, the speed they are making all this judgment and their moves is just incredible. I mean, this is, for example, now, so it looks like 2 pawns. Magnus is down to 8 seconds. He has to feel 2 pawns done. What is happening? What is happening? I mean, now it looks like it's very bad.
Magnus down to 5 seconds, but he's got 2 extra pawns. Sorry, Maxime has got 2 extra pawns. This
is looking winning for
knight g4,
but still not easy.
Never easy with a knight and rook. There are just so many checks and tricky jumps, and you could just end up in a fork before you know it.
But okay, now with the rook on e3, this is winning.
And he could just queen as well.
Yeah.
He's gone for it. Yeah.
I mean, incredible performance by Maxim. I mean,
amazing, Peter.
Our engine bar just died because he just couldn't take it anymore. I mean, it was obviously too much to handle.
And are we going to see a knight off? Bishop c4.
No, we see this line again. So the engine bar has died, so please don't pay attention to the engine bar. The game will be in equal mode throughout this game. We will fix it in the technical break after the 3+1 section.
This is incredible. Maxime leading by 2 points, and we're almost at the end of 3+1 segment. Potentially another 3 games, but Magnus really has a lot of ground to cover. And the way it's been going, Peter, as well, I would have, before it started, would have placed Magnus as a big favorite in the bullet section. But Maxime's control over the clock has been phenomenal in this match.
Yeah, incredible. I mean, incredible speed. But the big question will be when it starts with 1 minute, then how things will turn. But we are not there yet. What we have witnessed is, however, that Maxime is leading by 2 points. I mean, that's a big catch-up Magnus has to do here. And looking at the position, it seems like black is perfectly fine. I mean, nothing to worry about. 2 bishops. Okay, white has very solid structure. White is not running any big risk, but I mean, it does look very comfortable for black. Yeah.
Definitely thinking about getting f5 in, and he goes for it.
He goes for it. Yeah, I mean, Maxim wants to stay true to himself. I mean, he knows that this is his type of chess. He has to... he goes bishop c6. Okay, interesting. Giving the bishop d5 option.
Of course, he trades it off.
Trades it off. Yeah, queen b7.
And now has to... Queen b3.
Rook a8. Yeah, you have to take the
I
a5.
really like black's position here, Peter. Knight c4 is that, but it doesn't help because of queen d5. You've got queen d5, queen b5, queen d3, so that's not a possibility.
Yeah, knight b1 is played. White wants to go knight a3, somehow hit black's weakness on b5 and provoke b4, because then white would have eventually a possibility of placing the knight on c4, which is still much easier said than done, because then pawn on d5 will be hanging.
But black doesn't want to give any such chances and keeps it all consolidated with rook b8 and goes c4. So he wants to plant that knight on the b5 square, which is quite a nice spot for the knight.
Yeah, that was one of the strategic dangers I was feeling in the position, that here this b4 knight b5 and then rook a1 comes, and if bc then takes knight takes c4 is black will have to have some rook b3 counterplay. That will be very important. Yeah,
he has to do it, and he's done it. But white can also go rook d1, just keeping things under control. That bishop on the dark squared bishop is quite unhappy currently. Brings the king. Now he's going to free the rook from the d3 pawn defense, place it on a1, bring it into the game. Magnus has found his chances.
Yeah, definitely. Black has to go e4 because he needs this d3 square. I mean, after df, then rook a1, he always has rook d3, hitting the d5 pawn. It feels like it just should be enough to be fine for black. Yeah, you have to take, and king d2. Okay, so yeah, Magnus wants to kick the rook away with king c2, and if he gets it, he might have chances. Magnus might have chances. But
So
how do you deal?
5, rook f7, trying to create counter chances on the f file. This is very nice because he finds the weak spot in white's position and immediately goes for it.
Yeah, a tempo. So king moves back, king d2, and black really needs the bishop on d4, but knight takes d6 always comes with a tempo hitting the rook, so it's not so easy to sacrifice this pawn.
But he could play king e2, rook f5, move the knight back.
To e3, yeah?
And then you can come back and try and get your bishop on g7. That could be a plan. King e2 played. Is black going to go for rook f5? He's gone for rook b7. He wants to go rook b4, trying to move the knight away.
Yeah, and also bishop g7 already is in the air as well. Maybe rook a4. Maybe white has to play the move rook a4 because he goes rook a3. He wants to have b3 in the position. But is this so? Okay, it's very nice to keep the knight on c4, but okay,
but
king
also
is
white,
yeah. King
white
is
can slowly go king d2, king c2, and free up that rook.
Yeah, that's what he is doing. But still, king c3 runs into bishop g7 check, so it's not so easy.
Perhaps.
I mean, it's a very, very complex and difficult position.
King c2 played, and now white's rook is in the game. Magnus down to a minute, as is Maxime. A very tense situation because a very crucial match for Magnus if he wants his chances to keep going. He needs to create something in this endgame. Can white just go knight d2 here, Peter? Then you go king e5.
Then king e5, yeah, because rook protects the bishop. Yeah, that's very important. So knight d2, king e5. Rook takes e4, king d5, and rook protects the bishop.
Yes.
Yeah, that's. I mean, it looks like white got everything, but it's not clear if he can really benefit. But okay, this was perfect timing. This was perfect timing. Rook b4 played.
So black continues to try for counter activity. So after knight d6, you're just going to trade it off, go king e7, rook d4.
Yeah, I mean, probably first rook d4, but I mean, this is okay. Very hard to judge. Yeah, very hard to judge. And look at this, Magnus down to 20 seconds. Yeah, he's hesitating. He's not sure himself. I mean, it's very tricky, but yeah, rook e6. This gives safety, and he will be pawn up, and also he will have this rook g4, f4 idea, hitting the pawn structure, and then get access to the h4 weakness. This is Magnus's plan.
Oh, that's very nice. Rook g4 and f4 is the way to go. Probably after rook g4, he has to go rook f5.
King f5 as well. Yeah, you are just in time to activate. Yeah, so it's not easy. He returned with the rook, so he wants to go rook d3, king d2, probably then also rook e3, king e2 to get king to f3. Rook
would destroy a structure, and he was probably just in time in that line.
Yeah, he wanted to provoke this f3 in order to have king f5, king f4, and also not to let white's king go to g4 later on. But I mean, Magnus doesn't mind this because he cemented his rook. But okay, they are down to 9 seconds on the clock. This is bullet chess.
9 seconds on the clock, and the question is, how do you improve? He finds the f4 break. He finds his time to do that, but that's one more pawn trade. Takes king g5, rook g4, king h5, comes back, rook g5 hits it. Peter, very difficult to say how white is going to improve this position now.
Yeah, very difficult. But also to defend it, it's very difficult with this time. Yeah, white has all these chances activating the king. And
what incredible play by these two. I mean, this is just world-class level of chess in such short time on the clock. And Magnus finds his king. He finds a way to get his king into the game, gives up the g2 pawn.
And now he's winning because he wins the c5 pawn. Yeah, incredible.
He's done it.
Incredible.
Magnus Carlsen catching up. 7-8 is the score. And this is potentially the last game of the 3-minute segment.
Yeah. And we see exactly the same situation that Maxim is still leading with 1 point, and he has the white pieces before the last game. And now we're going to see a Berlin clash in Blitz. Very interesting to see how this will develop.
We don't get to see, so we haven't seen so much Berlin in the past 2 matches that we've commented on for the Speed Chess Championship. It's not a very blitz line.
Yeah, it feels like it's just way too complex to play it in a blitz game, but I mean, these are 2 incredible experts with lot of experience, so very, very interesting to see how this theoretical debate, because actually it's a theoretical debate, that's the biggest danger of all these Berlins, not to mix up all the move orders. There are so many finesses here and so on.
And we all remember that incredible win that Hikaru had over Maxime, I think, Peter, in the Skilling Open, where he beat Maxime in the Berlin. Was it against?
No, it was Maxime who beat Hikaru in this wonderful, yes. I mean, in the H5 line, yeah, Maxime is usually, if white wins against the Berlin, Maxim is involved in that game. That's kind of that's how things go, because apart of him, I don't really remember anyone lately winning against the Berlin.
That is true. Knight E7 played and white goes knight F4. So the big question in all these setups is for black to complete his development, get the bishop and the rook out. E6 is white's plan.
Yeah, I mean, if white gets E6 in nicely, it's very nice for white. Black is doing everything to stop that. Yeah, rook A6, trying to protect the E6 square. It's all about the E6 square. Even at the cost of pawn sacrifice, white can often sacrifice it. And look at this, Maxim is almost one minute ahead on the clock. This is exactly the reason why people are afraid to play the Berlin.
And black wants to go G5 next and bring the bishop out, as well as potentially threaten G4 at some point.
Yeah, also rook G8 kind of prepared G5, but it runs into knight H5, knight F6, so you have to calculate very precisely. Knight G6, I like this move a lot. Black targets this powerful knight from F4. This knight needs to be eliminated. Knight D3, of course, white keeps this knight. Bishop F5, and now it slowly starts to look like a real Berlin for black, because for a moment it looked like things went out of control, but still you have to cover this. Do you sacrifice this pawn with C4, or you play rook C6? You don't want to go B6 with the rook on A6. Yeah, he goes for this pawn sacrifice. It's typical. Now white,
and there is no real way to defend this pawn. You go C5, but black could trade on E4 and pick up that pawn on C5.
Yeah, and it still gets very messy. I mean, rook C4 runs into bishop F2 trick, and so black cannot capture white cannot.
He's gone for it, Peter. And here you were pointing out that rook C4 pinning this and trying to destroy doesn't work because a bishop F2 picks up the rook.
Yeah, so the question is E6, yeah, and E6 is on the board. You destroy the structure, but where you
has to go Fe6, or is F5 something worth considering? He's gone Fe6 because you don't want to keep that pawn alive. Rook G4, E5 is an option here. No, E5 is not an option here because white has the trick of taking on C5, so he had to move away with the knight on E7. Rook G7 now is met by rook G7, bishop G7, knight F5. So white instead decides to trade.
Bishop A3, oops.
Oh, wow. This was missed.
What a trick. What a trick by Maxim. And look at this. He's still 2 minutes on the clock. I mean,
my God.
This is why we are calling him the big expert of the Berlin, yeah?
He does it again. He does it again. He's going to beat two of the world's best players in Blitz. He beat Hikaru in Berlin, and now it looks like he's on his way to beat Magnus. This is incredible, Peter.
Yeah, but however, I still believe that Maxim would love to change all these victories for the win that he missed against Grischuk in the candidates, because that win would have given him even more than winning any of these games. By the way, he played a wonderful game there, and he came up with some new idea and everything, and it was really very bad luck that he didn't convert that position. Talking about this, is this so easy? I mean, I understand you are piece up and you have a bishop which is lost. It shouldn't be enough.
You're going to either pick up the h or the e pawn now, because e5 runs into rook h4, king e4, and then pick the pawn up. Rook f5, king e2, rook f6 runs into rook e5, so he's got to go e5. But now this rook on f5 is just stuck on this side. White simply brings his king to e4.
Yeah, and it's very important also that you don't take, you don't take this a4 pawn, because this stops, and if you take, then this pawn structure is broken. Bishop on d4 will control everything. Yeah, there are no, okay, just anything wins now.
And Magnus resigns, and with that, Peter, we are going into our bullet section with Maxime leading by 2 points.
Yeah, it's incredible. Okay, it cannot be more exciting.
Just amazing.
Yeah, just amazing. And also, this one in the Berlin, it was a masterclass by Maxime. Incredible.
And like you said, if White wins with the Berlin, you know who's playing White. It's Maxime Vachier-Lagrave. With that, we're going to go into a short break. Don't go anywhere, because an insane section of 30 minutes of 1+1 is coming up. And we know that the world champion never gives up. But boy, is Maxime playing incredible chess. We'll be right back.
Okay, I'm ready. I am supposed to checkmate black. Okay, I know that queen could go. Yay, I got it. All right, this is easy. Next one. White to play and win. Okay, well, I can go here. Oh, something with the knight. I know it's something with the knight, but I can't take this. Oh, why didn't I do that? Magnus Carlsen, Sergei Karyak in New York, 2016. I was in New York when he played this game. I should know what he did. Okay, I'm just gonna go for queen here. Needs to be something with the queen. Queen goes here, then king can take the queen. What other pieces do I have? I also, I'm gonna try the queen here. And I did it! Yay! I'm just as good as the world champion Magnus Carlsen. That's the feeling I have anyway. I'm gonna study on Chessable every day.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessable, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessable courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessable.com.
Broadcast tool here, ladies and gentlemen, as you can see in all its glory. You can see the notation. You can also see the engine evaluation next to each move, and also how long they spend.
What I like is you can make your own moves on the board. You can check the alternatives to what the players did. And even for the moves you make, you get the computer evaluation here.
Fantastic.
I think you get it quicker and better as a premium member, such as yours truly. What I also like, there is a chat function. You can exchange things with people from all over the world. If you want to see something else, let's say you're watching a tournament and you want to see all the games at once, no problem displaying. I have no idea how many games there are, like 128 games at the same time. Can do even more. This is a team competition. You click on multi-board.
That's beautiful.
You can see all the 8 games going on at once.
You can see the games and standings, which I...
What we got? I'll click around. Games and standings here.
Yeah. Analysis, if we click on that tab,
Let's click on it.
You can see that it's a great little graphical illustration. The red line is 0, that is the absolute even mark. And if the white bars go up, the further up they go, the bigger the advantage. And the black bars show a black advantage.
Then there is a database, and here we get the alternatives. And if we click on a move in the database, bam! It gets played on the board.
Fantastic. And then the PGN can even be downloaded.
Of your choice.
Yeah, and one of the great things I like to see as well is when we get a video from the playing hall. I like to see them in their seats, nervous, you feel the tension, you feel like you're there, don't you?
Chess is really becoming a spectator's internet sport.
Great that we can see that. I also love to see the fact that we can get in some of our friends to join us during the broadcast, and it's all interactive. That's what we love. And
a lot of overview functions there.
A lot of great functions there, ladies and gentlemen. Make sure you take advantage of all of them. Let's get back to the commentary.
Keep tweeting us, hashtag C24Live. We love to hear from you. Ask us anything mainly about Lawrence life, but if you have other questions, they're also welcome.
Also send us anything you like about Jan. Hashtag C24Live.
Absolutely.
Welcome back, everybody. We are about to kick off the bullet section of the format. It's a 1 minute with a 1 second increment. Magnus Carlsen playing catch up. He's behind by 2 points. Peter, this is the dream scenario that we were discussing for Maxime at the start, that he needs to get the lead in the 5 and the 3 minute section before he takes on Magnus in the bullet.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the point is that it puts a lot of pressure on Magnus. I mean, it's not the comfortable situation that like Hikaru was yesterday, that he equalized the match at the end. And when the bullet started, it was equal. Yeah, the score was equal. Now, a lot of pressure on Magnus. And usually, I mean, when you are under pressure, you cannot just play with the flow. Yeah, you very much care about the result. And I'm very excited and interested to see how Magnus will handle this situation. It's a big challenge.
A lot at stake. The qualifying spot into the finals to face Hikaru Nakamura. The finals are tomorrow, and that's how our bracket looks. Hikaru qualified with his win over Wesley So, and Magnus behind by 2 points against Maxime. Now, I know a lot of us have been saying that Maxime has incredible control over the clock. In the 5 minutes and the 3 minutes portion, we've seen him ahead on time majority of the games, but 1 minute is a completely different, it's a different game altogether. Even though you're shot on the clock, Peter, you start with 1 minute. The psychology is totally different.
Yeah, totally different, because usually, I mean, Maxime was always up on the clock and was in a comfortable situation with 1.5 minutes and so on. But here, of course, when clocks tick down very fast for both of them, that brings new dynamic. Maybe exactly this new dynamic is what Magnus needs, because he has been struggling. Of course, there was this heartbreaking moment with the mouse slip. Okay, I think that it was already not that heartbreaking, because the position was probably a draw and Magnus was already very angry anyway of not have winning that position. Definitely the mouse slip did not help. And that was a very crucial moment of the match, because with that win, Magnus would have just equalized the score and he would have 2 wins, straight wins, and lot of confidence. So many twists so far, big roller coaster, emotionally wise, so on. I don't know what to say.
Magnus is definitely going to need to get his A game on, because again, I think it's all about getting the momentum going right from the word go. And with that, we do have the word go as the games, I think, have started, Peter. Oh, we don't. We still have a couple of, we still have a minute or two before liftoff. But yes, if Maxime, and also the thing with bullet is it's very difficult to stop any kind of bleeding. You know, it's not like you can neutralize or just consolidate if you've lost the game and come back, because it's always going to be a decisive result with this time control. Super important to not go on tilt. If Magnus has to bounce back, he needs those early wins in this format. Otherwise, Peter, if it starts well for Maxime, I don't see Magnus coming back in this match.
Yeah, at least it's gonna be very tough. I don't have any experience that how many bullet games usually the players play during these 30 minutes. I'm not experienced enough for that. But definitely what Magnus needs to score a win right in the very first game, because he starts with the white pieces, just also to set the tone that, you know, yes, I understand I'm trailing, but I'm here. I know that this is the last section, and I'm gonna control it no matter if you are leading or not, Maxime. And exactly that's what Maxime will try to stop. I mean, not to let happen. And here we go. Magnus goes for the bishop b5 Sicilian.
And it's on. The one thing we do know about this format is, and we've seen it in Hikaru's matches as well, that the players have this little trick that when they're leading, they try to burn the clock and the time down as much as possible so that the number of games are not as many. And I think that's a very important part of gameplay in this format. It's going to be interesting if Maxime follows that same way of playing as we've seen Hikaru do it so successfully.
Yeah, well, to be honest, I'm very happy that so far today we haven't witnessed that strategies, but it was also not clear whom bullet will benefit, and the match was also so wide open that it was just very natural that things are out of control. And look at this, Magnus goes for a line which, in my mind, I felt like there had been quite a lot of games with it, so it shouldn't come as a surprise. But by judging at the speed how the players are playing, and Maxime goes for b4, yeah, this is very interesting. CB, queen takes b4, but queen b4, isn't this this is maybe a mistake. I think queen b4 is a mistake.
Is knight b5 an option here?
But I mean, how do you...
Knight b5, the point is that black has knight e5. Black is actually threatening knight e5, I think, Peter, here.
Yeah, but also maybe, yeah, knight b5.
Knight
but
b5 played. Bishop e4.
Nah, bishop e4, yeah. Knight c7, check, king d8.
What is going on here?
Well, actually, Magnus is losing. No, bishop d2. I mean, I almost said he's losing because he might end up in some bad endgame. But look at this, down to 20 seconds on the clock.
Down to 20 seconds. And the point is that if you trade off everything on e4, black just has an extra pawn. And Magnus trying to create an attack, but I don't see how he's going to do it. He goes into the endgame. Black has an extra pawn. Peter, this is a dream start for Maxime.
Yeah, okay. Now Magnus tries with knight g5. Yeah, you have to go knight e5 comes, bishop c3. I mean, Magnus has to save this game somehow. That's very, very important.
And rook b8 is an option.
But at least one can claim that by forcing d4, he got this e4 square. But on the other hand, what this e4 square gives, but yeah, king f1, he tries to put blockade. King is coming to d3.
Magnus fighting for a draw here. f5 and down to 16 seconds. Maxime with 20 seconds hits the knight. The knight has to go back to d2.
Yeah, Magnus is fighting for his life because he cannot take on d4 because e1 bishop will be hanging. So
that's an incredible line. And he could go e4 now. Yes, and that's it. This could just end very badly for white. Look at those two pawns, e4 and d3. All black has to do is get a successful e3. He wants to go knight d6. e6.
But also look at White's grip. I mean, White is unbelievably controlling the board. Yeah, he got his king to d5. In fact, anyone can win this game now. It's completely out of control.
Magnus down to 8 seconds, Peter.
Yeah,
And now it's... Oh, and he goes knight c7, knight a6. So he's got a way to defend the pawn from queening.
Still now White is the one pressing.
Because indeed, White is going to pick up all the pawns on the king side. Picks up d3, picks up h6.
Yeah, but he's just in time to hold. Yeah, incredible.
And now king e4, king f3 coming in. I thought that White perhaps could have picked up the pawn on h6, but then Black would have stopped the entry. And that's it. This king on f3 is strong enough to stop everything. Takes on g3, game over. What a save. Magnus cannot be unhappy with that result.
Yeah, this is a moral boost, because I think he understood that, yeah, probably. And how he defended, because, I mean, judging that you can let these pawns come, yeah? I mean, e4, d3, we kind of screamed that, okay, that's it. And exactly when I screamed as well, I understood, no, the game is just beginning. Because Magnus was very nicely feeling the dynamics of the position with 5 seconds on the clock. Amazing stuff. And we see this C3 Sicilian. I think that Johann Sebastian Christiansen wrote a chessable course on it, and there was this tweet from him like, and Magnus was saying, yeah, that I'm following what's happening, you know?
Peter, that is already step one, and that's something that the chat has brought up too many times, that this needs to happen. We've been talking about it since the Skilling Open. Yeah,
definitely. And, you know, I enjoy all these tweets, reading it and so on. And now also with these chessable courses, we see that the players are promoting the courses. And yes, because when Johann Sebastian wrote this course, or it went online, then the very next day, Magnus played it against Nepomniachtchi. You remember in this crazy C3 Alapin stuff? And there was all these tweets between the players. Yeah, a lot of actions. But what I see over the board is that Magnus now very much loves this position from the black side.
That makes a lot of sense. That bishop on c6, he's just going to move. He's got knight g4. I really like that move. But wait, what's happening after knight c6 exactly, Peter?
Yeah, that's the big question. I mean, queen h2, king f1, king h1, king e2, queen take g2.
Hitting on f2, hitting the knight on c6. But then you pick up the rook, you go queen f... I mean, I don't see this.
d6. Wow, very nice. Very, very nice. Because if the knight goes to e7, then the knight will be trapped there.
It's just trapped. That's an incredible idea. And now he could go queen h1, queen g2.
Yeah.
Because this defends the knight on g4. Nice move, threatening knight g6. So there's a little trick on the board that Black needs to be careful about. He goes e5, hitting that rook, also making place for the rook on d6 to defend knight g6.
Yeah, but now this is completely crazy, because after e5, the bishop is alive, the knight is not trapped anymore. I don't know what to say. Well, he wants...
Rook f6 now?
Knight h4, queen takes f2. Is this his idea? But at the end of the day, he will be piece done. It's not...
Doesn't seem to work, because you don't even have knight e3 check after king d1. He's just gone for rook f3. What's going on? He looks again like it's not enough for Black.
Yeah, and it was so beautiful. I mean, this idea, I mean, clearly Magnus has spotted this rook d6 idea when he went for knight g4. And then to misplay this is really unfortunate.
Magnus down to 6 seconds on the clock, takes on e5. Yes, this looks like it's going to be over, Peter. Just bishop goes to f7, and the rook is free now to get it into the game.
Yeah.
Rook h2.
h5 at least, but h5, king f4, rook g4, king f3, and he wins it, yeah.
That's a very nice line. So the point, and that's it, because Magnus needs to keep getting more games in. Let's just show this quickly, Peter. King f3, you don't have h4 because the rook on g4 hangs. White will go on to pick up the g3 pawn. And of course, we go again. No h4 this time, Peter.
Yeah, no h4, because, okay, the point is that after a break, you feel like your opponent is probably ready for it.
He goes for the line that he's employed in the 5-minute segment.
And e6. But what is this? I mean, it looks like white is just, I mean, got the maximum that you can ever dream of against the Grünfeld.
But look at Maxim's clock. He's taken 2 seconds so far.
Well,
So
I mean, he knows that, you know, the position is so bad that at least let me be up on the clock. Knight takes EC, that's a surprise. I mean, I felt like he wants to go bishop c6, keep this knight on f5 as long as he can. This is a completely lost structure, but he hopes for queen g5. But how do you get queen g5? Not just rook g1 maybe? I mean, trade off this active rook and...
With rook g1, black could play queen g5 because after knight e4, you've got rook g2 check. He's gone for queen g5. Knight e4 is not a threat because of rook g2 as well as queen g4. Just lots of options. So nothing to worry there. White has to trade the rooks. And now there's queen on g3. I like rook f8 coming in next. All the pieces coming into the game.
Yeah, I think that this is really, really unpleasant because you feel that it should be winning for white, but on the other hand, it's not trivial and you feel that you have to burn time to find the win. And
Don't
you don't
see it.
have time.
And rook f8, I don't like white's position here at all. Peter, it looks especially with 22 seconds and that king on d3. Your heart is not doing very well, I think.
Yeah, usually my heart doesn't do that well, but after c4, king d2, my heart is already, you know, more smiling because I feel that I'm more or less, but rook f2, yeah, everything comes, it's completely crazy. But rook f1, yeah, at least
That's a nice move. That's a nice move. So rook f1 runs into knight g3. You're getting rid of the pin. And now the h-pawn.
And bishop h6, not just the pawn, but bishop h6 hitting the e3 pawn.
Which actually makes, yes,
time.
This is a very nice idea. He does it and queen e4 has to be played to defend the e3 pawn. Knight d5 is also an option.
Yeah, knight d5 is maybe strong, but maybe not necessarily. c3 check played. Wow.
I like it because knight c4. What a game by Maxime, Peter.
And king d2, bishop takes e3 check. This is winning now.
He finds it. He finds it. This is over. This is over. Queen e3, knight c4, king c2, queen e2, just everything.
That's it. And Magnus had to resign to go for the next game. But
Peter, Maxime leads with 4 points.
Yeah, I mean, this is
7.5 to 11.5 and 18 minutes remaining for the world champion to make a comeback.
Yeah, that would maybe be the biggest comeback ever in this format. Yeah, I mean, it's minus 4.
Magnus he's known to be a comeback king, but this is very close to being impossible right now.
Yeah, especially because the way how Maxim is playing. Yeah, I mean, spots every tactic. He plays very, very fast. I mean, in the previous game, we have seen that, yeah, he even doesn't care about the opening phase anymore. He just wants to play super fast, still bad position, but keeping chances. And now Magnus says the same. You know, I don't want to equalize. I don't want anything. I just want to get a position where I can play a tempo, put pressure on the clock. And look at this first time, Magnus is up on the clock. But white has a wonderful position. However, we have seen that wonderful position doesn't mean that much here. There are all kinds of knight f5 tricks, but probably Magnus feels that he's in time to neutralize this with some knight g6 later on.
And the first time Maxime is really falling short on the clock. Can white go knight f5? Black just takes gf5, queen g5, knight g6, ef5.
And then h6.
There's h6 in the end, which would solve all problems. So knight f5 doesn't work. He improves the bishop to c4. Now threatening moves like knight g5. At some point hitting on f7. Has to be a little careful about d5. He's gone for c5 instead.
Yeah, this is, I think, not psychological because Magnus sees that he's up on the clock. He wants to close the position so that there will be no direct confrontation, and just try to play fast and the long game.
A long game, and I like what he's doing. Maxime is down to 14 seconds. Does white want to get f4?
No, white wants to get this knight to c4. I mean, it's lovely, but the question is, oh no, knight's perfect for black.
So queen e7, rook h4 is also not a threat. Queen g5, rook f7 is coming. How is black defending it with the knight on h6?
Yeah, and all of a sudden white is doing great because white also has some rook f6 ideas. Yeah, knight g8 back. Yeah, you have to control this f6 square because Maxim had this rook f6 chance.
And just look at the speed with which the players are playing, just mind-blowing speed.
Yeah, now knight g1 is coming.
That's a very nice rerouting of the knight to f3 to move this rook from e5.
Yeah, typical classical Spanish idea, knight to f3, but now the rook on f4 is threatened to be trapped somewhere. Magnus needs to get his knight to e5, but it's almost impossible. Yeah, so
and now takes with the d pawn. That's interesting.
Yeah, and now Magnus in his element. I mean, now he feels that maybe here I can do something in this endgame. But still, yeah, this breaking the structure immediately, not giving time for black to...
Rook f8 now is not possible because you trade a knight f3.
Yeah, now white is just better with this. Yeah, he can take and bishop g4. King f6, king g4.
How is white improving? So you want to go bishop c6 and d6, d7. But bishop c6 has bishop c8 check.
But I mean, maybe here Maxim made a mistake, no? I mean, knowing Hikaru's strategy, he could have maybe burned much more time on the clock in this bishop endgame. You know, because black cannot really do much.
He knows that Peter doesn't approve of that, so he decided not to.
Okay. Or he's just way too confident. He's +4 after all.
That's true. That's actually a really big score. And with 14 minutes left on the clock, it's pretty much go big or go home for Magnus. He needs to score a win, Peter.
Yeah, he needs to score now a win, and he goes for a very, very sharp line in this bishop e3, knight g4, Najdorf. Again, a big theoretical clash. I mean, it also signals, you know, how important this match is for Magnus as well, because it's not like, you know, the score is not going well and then he doesn't want to show any opening idea. No, he's actually trying very hard to put pressure on Maxim as much as he can.
I think the one thing that we know about Magnus is that he hates losing, and every tournament he is just playing to win it. And this is the first time that he's returning to the Speed Chess Championship since 2017.
Wow, but knight f5, I mean, you had no right to allow this. Now black is busted. Now black is busted.
And how is... He just takes on f6. So bishop f6 is going to pick up the h6 pawn, and this looks like exactly what Magnus needed. Now Maxime needs to just keep the clock going, Peter. He needs to let this run out as much as he can, fight for as long as he can.
Yeah, but I mean, how long can he fight here? Because he might just get crushed, but okay, you already don't care, right?
You just play. You just do what you can to keep the game going. It doesn't... I'm sure Maxime realizes this is completely lost, although he has created a threat on b2 now.
Yeah, he has some chances. I mean...
And you know, there's always queen a5 that could come into the game if you make a move like b3. So maybe we're calling it too soon right now.
No, I think it was much more lost before now. Yeah, Magnus goes 97, but hang on, the rook b2, king c1.
Rook b2 or bishop b2, Peter? Bishop b2. Bishop g7 was a big threat. He played c... This is a completely different game.
Oh my God! I mean, bishop a3 was winning for... Was it? I'm not... Okay, it's just too quick everything.
It doesn't matter because I don't think Maxime is losing anymore.
Yeah, but now white is in control. I mean, white's position looked very, very dangerous, suspicious, but now it stabilized again. But things are out of control. I mean...
Knight d3 runs into queen h8. So he has to be careful about queen h8, queen b8. So he gives a check on f2. Will he just trade off the queens?
Knight d3. Yeah, this is very bad news for Magnus because he has to burn so much time to convert this better endgame.
And also Magnus must be kicking himself to just mess up that completely winning position after the opening. Now he picks up the a6 pawn next.
Yeah, but this is still quite a journey. Yeah.
Rook a4, and not really clear because rook a7, you want to go king f6.
No, knight's a win, f6, and it's game over. But I mean, it will still require moves, and now rook e7 check and a7. That's it. Yeah.
And that's it. Maxime resigns.
Okay, Magnus starts his comeback, but will it be enough?
It's a long journey, Peter.
Yeah, it's still -3, and now he uses the Alekhine defense. It has served him well in the playoff against Hikaru, right? I mean, we were commenting on that game in the Kiva finals. There was some incredibly sharp. I think Hikaru went for the 4 pawns variation and things went completely out of control.
Peter, if you had to give a percentage chance on Magnus making a comeback here, what would it be? We started this match with a 60-40 to Magnus.
I think that says it all. I don't know. I mean, it just. I mean, I'm rooting for Magnus now to make as exciting fight as possible, but I'm not sure how much is still possible here.
Not Fisher saying it would be a miracle, but it's possible. It'd definitely be a miracle.
I mean, how many minutes left?
We've got 9 minutes remaining.
Oof. So he has to win all the games.
He has to win every single game from now.
Yeah. I mean, one blow and it's over.
That is correct. Wait, rook e3? Oh
no, the queen is protected.
Yeah, I am losing my mind as well.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, I lost it long ago. You know, I mean, if you just lost it now, it's fine. It's great. I mean, this is. But look at this. Whenever Magnus plays the Alekhine, he gets lovely position almost right out of the opening. I mean, is this Alekhine defense really so good? But if it would be so good, he would be using it more often. Yeah, not just as a surprise. Wow, look at this.
So now he's created his chances in this game as well, Peter. Lots of activity by Black's pieces. The e3 knight is pinned by the bishop, and so he can't currently pick up the b4 pawn because the rook on e5 hangs, but he could just pick up the e3 pawn, but then white trades the queens and picks up the c6 pawn. So a lot of pawns hanging everywhere.
Yeah, this typically annoying position that you feel that it should be winning, but there is no clear direct way.
I like c5 moving away, and now a move like rook e3 is also possible. He's gone for it. Rook e3, fe3, queen g3. You trade that off first, and then you go bishop e3.
Yeah, but white gets this a5 counterplay. I mean, it's really amazing that whenever Maxime is in trouble, somehow his position, rook a1. This is still chance next time, but still.
But this is a million pawns for Black. And again, this should be just winning for Black, right, Peter?
Well, it looks, but I mean, look at this. White has incredible coordination with bishop on e4. The 4 pawns don't move on the king side. White's king is coming closer. Now white is safe. Now white is not even worse.
Because you just don't have a way to advance your pawns anymore. White has found the structure to stop the b4 and the c3 pawn. And this g4 pawn is stopping counterplay on the king side. Incredible.
Yeah. Okay, this was nice that at least Magnus managed to provoke this pawn to g3, because then he will always have this target with his rook. And finally the king activates itself, king d7. If
this ends in a draw, I think it's the end of the road for the world champion.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, time is ticking. King e2, c2. Yeah, so Magnus goes for the g3 pawn, but what are his winning chances here? Okay, he relies on rook g2 check, forcing the king away, and tries to get f5 in so that he gets 3 connected passers. That's the chance. But now white will start checking. Rook a5, king e6, bishop f3, g4, king f6. Yeah, he needs this rook f3, king g5, h4. Now black is making progress.
But that bishop f3 looked like a bit of waste of time. He could have started with the checks already. And now this king g3 now. He's gone for rook e3.
Yeah, rook e3, and then okay, now rook c5, king g3. Yeah, now he wins. It's incredible. Yeah.
Wow.
Rook f5.
And takes an h1, and that is over. And Maxime doesn't burn time. He doesn't play for burning the clock, but he just continues to the next game.
Yeah, I think this is showing respect, and I mean he wants to win the match on the board. I mean this is the classical approach.
Pure sportsmanship. Knight c3 played, knight e7, and Peter, there's just time, I think, for 3 games. So again, if Magnus has to make his comeback, he needs to win every game.
Yeah, he has won 2 and forced Maxim to go to the Caro-Kann. I mean, it's I'm not sure that Maxim is feeling so comfortable in these structures. Definitely not having enough experience, but also Magnus is playing a line which I'm not sure he really has so much. But g4, he's winning the piece. Is he? Now knight d takes e5, followed by queen takes d4. No, it's not. Knight d takes e5. No, he goes bishop g4. Okay, so it's also mortals, because I mean what they have been showing in the last 1.5, 2 hours was insane. But yeah, they are also showing some weakness. And if they would not be showing weakness in a bullet game, that would be just insane.
Peter, I've just got confirmation that in case the match ends with 12-12, that would mean 4 more games of the same bullet segment with 1+1. And in case that's a tie as well, then we move on to the Armageddon.
That's what we want to see, no? I mean, please entertain us, yes? So maybe Maxim is just understanding it's not about sportsmanship. He just wants the people to enjoy it as much as possible. But yeah, Magnus still has a lot to catch up. Okay, now he's about to win his 3rd game in a row, which is still bringing him only closer, but it's not enough yet. By far not enough yet. Yeah, knight f4. I mean, those are these little moves that really make you very upset, because you feel that, yeah, it should be winning, but I mean, it's not elementary. If Magnus loses the d7 pawn, then the chances of winning this game quickly are vanishing. And
it's happening now. It's happening. He's lost the d7 pawn.
Yeah, I mean, converting this will take a lot of time.
But we will still have enough for just 1 more game, Peter. Even if he comes down, because there are 2 minutes left on the clock for the match to finish. So we're definitely going to have 1 more game after this.
I mean, he needs to win this game in 2 minutes, yeah?
He needs to win this game within the next 2 minutes, yes.
Yeah.
And I think it's headed there. He's managed to pick up. So rook a2 is a threat, which is why he moved away with the bishop. And I have to say, Peter, winning 3 games in a row to even get to here, just unbelievable play by Magnus.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. But, you know, I feel like maybe the sportsmanship, the incredible sportsmanship by Magnus will come to haunt him, because if he would have not designed that previous game, he could have still gained some 30 more seconds maybe on that game. It's dramatic. Yeah, and Maxim designs, yeah. So basically...
Oh my God. This is an insane match. We have 1 more bullet game remaining, and Magnus at 11, Maxime at 12. It's all down to this game.
Yeah. This is epic. I mean, I don't know what to say. I have never seen something like this, never heard anything of like this.
You can just never write him off. this is coming back from the dead. I mean, following up 4 games down to 11 last minutes of the whole match and then scoring 3 big wins, just unbelievable.
Yeah, and how he got there. Yeah, I mean, it was already he was in a very, very, in a very bad mood. Yeah, he missed many chances. Things didn't go right. Maxim was using all the chances, punishing him for every single mistake, and he finds the strengths. And look at this, he got c5 in, and he got a game. Magnus got a game. I mean, the dream scenario with the black pieces. After move 6-7, you already have a full-fledged fight. And
if this game Magnus manages to squeeze out the win in this one, then we see 4 more games of Bullet with 1+1 time control. And in case that's a tie as well, we move on to the Armageddon.
I mean, completely crazy position.
Can he take on 8-7 now?
Yeah, but do you wanna waste time for that pawn? It's a big question.
Not anymore. That's not an option anymore.
Yeah, but now it was very nice for Magnus that with queen b6 he protected the e6 pawn. He didn't have to go knight f8. He gets the dynamic. He has queen c6 hitting the g2 pawn. Okay, white plays f3, takes, and what next? Because white has a very solid, stable position.
And now he's just going to put pressure along the e file on the e6 pawn and trade and pick that up with knight e6, but he decides not to.
Yeah, because actually, Maxim wants to keep this structure because black's bishop on c8 is dead, the king on e8 is vulnerable. Magnus down to 14 seconds on the clock.
That's a very good point, Peter, that actually the e6 pawn, having it on the board is more beneficial for white than not having it on the board.
Yeah, Maxim opened the position up. Yeah, he opened it up with d4, which looked strange, but he wanted to get his knight.
Next, king h1 and queen c2, and the queen enters the game, and that would be disastrous. How is white fighting? Can white just go queen c2 now? Then you want to go rook f6. He goes knight g6 instead. What an incredible game. Magnus down to 4 seconds.
Yeah.
And that's it.
That's it, yeah.
That's it.
There is no way back from here. I mean, this is...
Oh my God. Impossible. Unbelievable. Maxim with 23 seconds on his clock.
Yeah.
But Peter, that's it. Maxim wins. He wins 11-13, and with that, that's a very sweet way into the finals. Not only do you get that spot, but you do it by defeating the world champion, which is, as we know, no easy task whatsoever. But Peter, not just the score, incredible quality of play by Maxim.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, also Magnus was putting up an incredible fight. Okay, clearly Magnus was not in his best shape, but you know, this best shape thing is like this, that you show shape how much your opponent lets, and a lot of credit goes to Maxim that, you know, I mean, he was driving Magnus crazy. He didn't let him settle in his comfort zone and show his real strength. He created problems all the time, and finally he was a deserved winner for today's match.
And as we saw, Magnus scored those 3 critical wins back to back to build his chance, but then the final game taken away by Maxim. And Peter, it all came down to that big 2-point margin that he had before going into the bullet section.
Yeah, that was crucial. That was vital. That actually forced Magnus to take more risk. I mean, not to play the usual chess he likes to. And yeah, basically Maxim made perfect use of it. But also this comeback, what Magnus started at the very end, I mean, winning 3 games in a row and almost doing it on the other hand, also incredible. Kudos to Maxim by making all this. Was an incredible fight.
What a fight, just how we like it. And we've actually been treated to 2 amazing semifinals, Peter. The Hikaru Wesley match was amazing, and today's final, one that I think few would have predicted for Maxim to come on top at the end. And with that, we get Maxim Vachier-Lagrave taking on Hikaru Nakamura in the final. You don't want to miss that. Join us for that tomorrow. And also more good news, more chess stuff for all of us. There is a 40% discount on going premium currently with Chess24. Use the code SPEED20. Let me just confirm that. Yeah, it's SPEED20 for 40% off. With that, you support everything that Chess24 does, but also more importantly and more interestingly and more everything, you get to be a part of the Champions Chess Tour, because this year the audience will get a chance to vote back their favorite players into the tour. You'll also get access to all the resources on chess24.com to improve your own game, plus challenge the world's best players to different chess formats. But for now, it's a wrap from us. Join us tomorrow for the finals. Good night, Peter.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, Tanya. Bye, everyone.
Okay, I'm ready. I am supposed to checkmate black. Okay, I know that queen could go here, but then, the knight. The black knight can stop me if I go here. Okay, so I'm gonna go here. Yay! I got it. All right, this is easy. Next one. White to play and win. Okay. Well, I can go here. Oh, something with the knight. I know it's something with the knight, but I can't take this. Oh, why didn't I do that? Magnus Carlsen, Sergei Karyak in New York, 2016. I was in New York when he played this game. I should know what he did. I should know what he did. Okay, I'm just gonna go for queen here. Needs to be something with the queen. Queen goes here, then king can take the queen. What other pieces do I have? I also, I'm gonna try the queen here. And I did it! Yay! I'm just as good as the world champion Magnus Carlsen. That's the feeling I have anyway. I'm gonna study on Chessable every day.